Chapter 418, Golden Core Demon. Chapter 418, Golden Core Demon. Jiang Hao received a mission from the task hall and then turned to leave. It was the task of recruiting disciples, with a compensation of 2,500 spirit stones. The deadline hadn't changed. It was still 3 months away. 3 months. With his foundation establishment realm, if the other party returned to the Black Heaven sect, the round trip would take more than 3 months. Jiang Hao didn't think much about it. Anyway, he didn't intend to complete it. The more people he brought back, the greater the impact on him. This time, he didn't plan to delay his journey. Xiao Li and the others had just settled down. It might not be long before they entered the Bright Moon sect. If he didn't go now, he would miss the opportunity. Back at the Spirit Herb Garden, Jiang Hao informed Cheng Chou about his departure. The outer sect's Spirit Herb Garden was now on track. As long as there were no unexpected incidents within the sect, there wouldn't be any major issues there. Those who used to harass and cause trouble in the Spirit Herb Garden had become much more self-aware because of unexpected deaths and injuries. However, it was uncertain how long the peace would last. But by the time Jiang Hao ascended to the Golden Core realm, none of these people would dare offend him. As for the dangers in the sect at the moment, only the Sea Fog Cave was the most prominent one. Jiang Hao felt that there was something unusual about it. However, 3 months had passed, and it seemed like there was no progress. Going out now would also provide a chance to avoid whatever was there. If there was danger, he wouldn't need to get involved. Cultivating the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment seemed to be even more perilous. "How long will you be gone this time, senior brother Jiang?" Cheng Chou asked. He felt uneasy without Jiang Hao around. Han Ming, Miao Tinglian, and Mu Qi were all absent. If he wanted help, there was no one to turn to. The most harrowing thing was the fact that even the Spirit Beast wasn't around. With Lord Beast present, he felt much more at ease. After instructing Cheng Chou, Jiang Hao went to where Lin Ji was. Since he might be away for 3 months, he needed to give Lin Ji some guidance. Lin Ji wasn't the same little kid he used to be. He was now an 18-year-old youth. He was cutting bamboo in the bamboo forest. Despite being in the sect for several years, he was still at the first stage of the lifeblood refinement realm. Senior brother Jiang. Lin Ji stopped his work when he saw Jiang Hao. "How's your progress?" Jiang Hao asked. "About the same as before," Lin Ji said. "I heard that both of your friends have already reached the Foundation Establishment realm?" Reaching Foundation Establishment realm at 18 years old was a formidable achievement. Their talent was comparable to Han Ming's. Unfortunately, they weren't a match for Han Ming yet. They could only compare in terms of the speed of their cultivation, but they wouldn't be able to catch up in the later stages. Of course, it didn't rule out the fact that they had enough opportunities and put in enough effort. It was just extremely difficult to catch up to Han Ming. In the past, Han Ming participated in the war with Azure Mountain and the Heavenly Saint sect. Whenever there was a battle, he was ready to march. Moreover, he managed to survive every time with considerable achievements. Luck, strength, talent, determination, and execution. Han Ming had them all. I also heard that senior brother Lin reached the Foundation Establishment realm first. Senior sister Zhao should be close too, Lin Ji said. "Are you in a hurry to reach the Foundation Establishment realm?" Jiang Hao asked. Lin Ji lowered his head and then smiled bitterly. "I'm hopeful, but not in a hurry." Jiang Hao nodded. "Practice diligently, read more books, and observe others more. Read the Book of Sages." Apart from the hardships he faced, Lin Ji would have to face 2 more difficulties. If his progress was slow, it would lead him to despair. However, if he progressed rapidly, he would think himself invincible and lose himself. He had overcome the former, but the latter still needed time to come to fruition. After giving some more guidance on cultivation, Jiang Hao left. Later that night, he glanced at his interface. 30 years old. Jiang Hao felt quite emotional when he looked at his age. Lin Ji was 18. Xiao Li was 19. But somehow, he had already turned 30. The time had passed so fast. He still felt like he was only 19. That was the first time he had seen Hong Yuye. Except for that single trip, he hadn't gone out since then. He had wanted to find his stepmother and his family, but now it seemed he might not have the chance. He still didn't know where they had gone. He had searched through all the nearby cities, but there was no news of them. If he had younger siblings, maybe he could hear about them in the future. If not, his past remained frozen at the time he used to be a 5-year-old child. Sometimes he wondered how things would have turned out if he hadn't been sold. Perhaps he would have died in famine, or maybe he would have survived and then been sent to work by his stepmother once he reached a certain age. When he got a bit older, he might have chosen to leave them and start a family. He could have found a wife and lived a peaceful life. If his luck was rotten, he would have suffered throughout his life. Maybe his 10-year-old self would have rebelled and run away to the Heavenly Note sect anyway. Unfortunately, he could only speculate. Jiang Hao looked at his cultivation and lifeblood and didn't pay attention to his wandering thoughts. Nearly 2 years had passed, and they were finally full again. Without hesitation, he began to advance. Late at night the next day, Jiang Hao used the Heaven Secret's hidden talisman and disappeared. In Tiansheng Prefecture in the east, the night sky was filled with stars, and disciples occasionally soared through it. Not far from the Bright Moon sect, there was a city. The city was brightly lit and was adorned with flowers. Most of the people passing through had an extraordinary aura, as if there were no ordinary people among them. This was a city mostly inhabited by cultivators. It was called Star Moon City. The inns and lodgings in the city were almost fully occupied. The inn named Eternal Traveler was also fully booked. At this moment, most of the people in the inn were cultivating, while the occupants of one room were sound asleep. Inside the room, the furnishings were simple. A young girl smacked her lips in her sleep as if she saw something delicious in her dreams. A spirit beast was sprawled out on the table, asleep. A puddle of drool formed beneath its mouth. A faint light appeared on the ground. A figure surrounded by purple energy silently materialized in the room. The person looked at the beast and realized that it had already reached the Golden Core realm. Then, he glanced at the girl on the bed. She had reached the Foundation Establishment realm. Indeed, neither of these two stayed the same for long. Shaking his head silently, he extended his hand and 2 golden rings appeared from the ground and fell into the hands of the girl and the beast. He no longer needed them. Jiang Hao turned to leave. However, just as he took a step, he felt a sudden burning pain in his chest. He opened his shirt to look at his chest. The one heart palm that was imprinted on his chest flashed briefly and disappeared. When it disappeared, a figure in red appeared beside him. It was a familiar shadow with a familiar fragrance. Hong Yuye. Just as he was about to turn around, the beast suddenly shot into the air and dropped back down to the ground. The beast, which had been perfectly fine before, now had a swollen face. Looking at the beast with a bruised and swollen face, Jiang Hao sensed that it was a warning. Chapter 419, Demoness explains one heart palm. Chapter 419, Demoness explains one heart palm. Jiang Hao let out a sigh as he looked at the beast, which was in a very bad condition. The beast still had some dignity. Hong Yuye never targeted anyone but the beast. It was admirable that it survived the encounter every time. Senior. Jiang Hao turned and respectfully bowed. Hong Yuye was dressed in a red and white gown. Her hair fell down her shoulders and chest. She looked elegant and classy. She was just about to say something when an urgent voice sounded from behind. Beast. My meat bun. Xiao Li even kicked her blanket away, and it flew away from the bed. Jiang Hao sighed helplessly. Did she only even dream about food? Hong Yuye looked at Xiao Li and took a step forward. Then, she covered Xiao Li with a blanket. In her sleep, Xiao Li sniffed. Senior sister, she was half awake and in a daze. How old is she this year? Hong Yuye asked. She's supposed to be 19, Jiang Hao said. The age of dragons differed from that of humans. Xiao Li had never changed even after all these years. She was the same as when she first entered the sect. She hadn't grown at all. She hasn't grown mentally nor physically, Hong Yuye said. Jiang Hao was helpless. He had only requested Xiao Li to stay out of trouble and not cause any commotion. More importantly, it depended on the beast. Currently, Xiao Li was growing well. She was fearless in the cliff of broken hearts. The most important thing for her was food. Jiang Hao looked at his chest and realized that the one heart palm had disappeared. The purpose of this palm technique was for Hong Yuye to travel long distances. From the south to the east, the distance was great. Even Hong Yuye found it difficult to cross it. That's why the one heart was left on him. It allowed them to travel together. However, it seemed like this palm technique could only be used once. Suddenly, Jiang Hao thought of something. If he was married to many people across the north, west, east, and south, would it be easier for him to travel great distances with the help of this palm technique? Would it be even more convenient than the golden rings? He wanted to learn this technique. Just as Hong Yuye was about to turn away from the sleeping Xiao Li grabbed her hand in her sleep and hugged it to her. Mom. Jiang Hao was a bit worried. Even if Xiao Li didn't do that intentionally, it was easy for Hong Yuye to get riled up. Are you worried about her? Hong Yuye didn't pull her hand away. She just turned to look at Jiang Hao. Xiao Li is young. She didn't mean to offend you, senior, said Jiang Hao. Has she remained by your side after her parents died? Asked Hong Yuye as she looked at Xiao Li. Jiang Hao thought for a moment. Not exactly. After Xiao Li's parents died, the beast stayed with her and comforted her. I'm not good at that, so I couldn't do much for her. Xiao Li tightly clung to Hong Yuye's hand and didn't let go. Hong Yuye moved a bit closer to her. Why would someone like you stay in a demonic sect? Hong Yuye gestured for Jiang Hao to stand beside her. Senior, you must be kidding, said Jiang Hao. That doesn't have anything to do with where I am. You're easily influenced by emotions, Hong Yuye said calmly. Emotions? Jiang Hao thought of Xiao Li's old parents, who were struggling with their health. They held on and waited for Xiao Li to return home every time. He also thought of Lin Ji's mother. Even though she was suffering from a serious illness, she traveled dozens of miles to get a protective talisman for her child. She bore the burden until she heard the good news. After that, she finally let go. He thought of his stepmother and his family. Though his memories of them weren't very vivid, he was determined not to forget. Regardless of whether they were kind or harsh to him, he wanted to see them again. He didn't even know why he wanted it, but he wanted to see them one last time anyway. Jiang Hao shook his head. Senior, you must be joking. His weaknesses were too obvious, and for him, that was a disaster. Hong Yuye glanced at him in front of her and didn't think much of his lie. Were you just thinking about the palm technique on your chest? She asked. Jiang Hao didn't answer. He was thinking about it, but he didn't dare voice his thoughts. The technique is called the one heart palm. Do you know the conditions for activating it? Hong Yuye asked. No. Jiang Hao shook his head. The one heart palm requires a relationship between a man and a woman for it to activate successfully. To use it, you just need to leave an imprint on the body, like I did earlier, Hong Yuye said. Jiang Hao didn't respond. He already knew all of this. Are you thinking that once you learn this technique and have a relationship with many women, you can go anywhere? Hong Yuye sneered. Why do you think it's called the one heart palm and not the many hearts palm? If you have a relationship with a second person, the one heart palm can't be used. So, once you've mastered it, you can only use it on me. Do you still want to learn? Hong Yuye smiled sinisterly. Jiang Hao lowered his head and didn't answer. He did want to learn it. If there was danger, he could immediately go to Hong Yuye. Even if she was too terrifying and might be unpredictable, she was his safe bet. If he was on the brink of death, going to Hong Yuye would undoubtedly provide a way out. However, earning it was one thing. Leaving an imprint on someone else's body was another. Hong Yuye had left an imprint on his chest. He didn't dare do the same to her. That would turn out to be deadly. With a sigh, Jiang Hao also gave up on the idea of learning it. Red Yuye didn't say anything either. She just watched Xiao Li. After a while, Xiao Li finally let go of her hand and went back to dreaming about food. Hong Yuye pulled her hand back and disappeared with Jiang Hao. Ah! The spirit beast wailed and held its face in pain. Then, it looked around. Beast, what's wrong with you? Xiao Li was startled awake. I thought the master was here, said the beast. Where? Xiao Li looked around but didn't see anyone. She sniffed again but didn't smell anything. She looked at the spirit beast. Your face is swollen again. That is a favor from an acquaintance. The master must be nearby. Jiang Hao had already arrived at the street. The place was brightly lit. It was a city that never slept. Star Moon City. It's near the Bright Moon sect. It's said that many sects gather here, Jiang Hao said. It's busier than the cities you've visited before, Hong Yuye said. Indeed, it was bustling. Jiang Hao was amazed. The streets were paved with jade and stone, and towering pavilions filled the area. Everything looked beautiful. The entire city seemed to have formed naturally, and its grandeur was impeccable. It looked very festive. The city was truly remarkable. Where do you plan to go, senior? Asked Jiang Hao. Go where? Hong Yuye looked at him with a smile. Haven't we hung out before? Jiang Hao was momentarily stunned. Were they just going to observe and not get involved? That was fine too, as it wouldn't affect his plans for later. However, her sudden appearance had disrupted his arrangements a bit. He needed to find a place to buy some tea first. Chapter 420. Chapter 420. You know how to bargain? Chapter 420. You know how to bargain? Jiang Hao walked into a pavilion somewhat helplessly. He thought he would find a place for Hong Yuye to stay and go out alone to buy tea. Unfortunately, Hong Yuye came along with him to the city. He had no choice but to take her along to buy tea leaves. The pavilion didn't look very big, so Jiang Hao dared to explore it. He was worried that the price for the tea would be too expensive here than at the Heavenly Note sect. The place was filled with spirit tea. No one was there to welcome him, so he explored the place alone. Soon, he saw the 1,000-flower tea. It was priced at 181 spirit stones. It was unexpectedly cheaper, but the minimum purchase was 25 grams. If he bought and resold it, he could make a decent amount of money. Then he saw Snow Queen Spring, which was priced at 70 spirit stones for 5 grams. That was 20 spirit stones more expensive than what he bought at his sect. If he could set up a stall here, he could sell it for 60 and still make a profit. He could fully utilize the golden rings and come here to sell things. Leaving the sect wouldn't be too difficult either. He could take on a mission from the Law Enforcement Hall and set aside 2,000 or 3,000 spirit stones as compensation. But unfortunately, nothing was that simple. Tea leaves weren't easy to sell either. What would you like to buy, fellow disciples? Asked a young woman. She was at the early stage of the Golden Core realm. Was this all a Golden Core realm cultivator capable of? It made sense somehow. The city was crowded, and there wasn't much opportunity. Competition was fierce. Help me get. The moment Hong Yuye spoke, Jiang Hao felt anxious. Ancient spirit tea, he said hurriedly. He had seen that tea in the Heavenly Note sect before. It was priced at 500 spirit stones for 5 grams. All right, please follow me. The young woman was quite surprised, but she nodded and smiled. Jiang Hao felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't dare to turn around. If Red Yuye had just asked for red azure tea, he would have gone bankrupt. He could only cut her off. Fortunately, it seemed that ancient spirit tea still met her standards. The woman prepared to brew a pot of tea. Please have a taste and check the quality first. Jiang Hao and Hong Yuye sat down and waited. Only after they were seated did the young woman sit down. She was very polite and professional, which surprised Jiang Hao. She was at the Golden Core realm, while they only displayed their cultivation at the Foundation Establishment realm. Hong Yuye must have suppressed her cultivation to be on par with his. After a while, a pot of ancient spirit tea was ready. The woman poured them each a cup. Please try it. If you like it, you can buy the tea. If not, then this pot of tea can be considered a gift from the pavilion. Jiang Hao's attention wasn't on the tea but on the brewing process. It was rather complicated. He picked up the cup, and the fragrance wafted into his nose. He took a sip. It was slightly bitter. As it cooled down, he felt the spiritual energy surge into his body. It gave him the feeling of being among the mountains and rivers. This tea was good. Jiang Hao turned to look at Hong Yuye. At this moment, the cup had just left her lips. This is average quality. The young woman was surprised. She smiled. Your assessment is similar to our pavilion masters. I can lower the price by 30 spirit stones. It'll be 450 spirit stones now. What do the two of you think? Hong Yuye didn't say anything. The woman turned to Jiang Hao. He hadn't expected her to lower the price. In the end, he bought 50 g of ancient spirit tea and 50 g of red sleeve tea. He got a discount of another 80 spirit stones. In total, it cost him 5,300 spirit stones for everything. The tea should last until the end of the trip. Now, he was left with 11,168 spirit stones. All the spirit stones he earned over 2 years were spent here. After getting used to the surroundings, he decided to find a place to set up a stall and sell his goods. He hoped to accumulate enough spirit stones for the incarnation of the immortal peach tree. He had one concern. His cultivation realm was in the middle stage of the soul ascension realm. He didn't know if it would be enough to set up a stall here. After all, this was a city near the Bright Moon sect. If someone were to cause trouble, they might be at the soul ascension realm or higher. He needed to be prepared. When they left the pavilion, Hong Yuye looked at him. You know how to bargain? It can save some spirit stones. Jiang Hao nodded. But what if she had refused to sell it? Hong Yuye asked. That's all right. We never know until we try, after all, Jiang Hao said. I never saw you take a gamble before. Well, it's different. Gambles include risks. I just want to be careful with certain things, said Jiang Hao. How old are you this year? 30. Hong Yuye fell silent. She seemed deep in thought. Jiang Hao didn't know what she was thinking. But it meant that the two of them had known each other for 10 years, and soon it would be 11. 11 years had swiftly passed by. Where do you want to go next, senior? Jiang Hao asked. Hong Yuye was silent for a while, then, she said, let's go to the riverside. It was nighttime, and the stars and moon were radiant in the sky. At the riverside of Star Moon City, the reflection of the stars fell on the water's surface. Jiang Hao rented a boat. Hong Yuye stood at the bow of the boat, while he ferried the boat at the stern. In the darkness of the night, Jiang Hao gently sailed the boat through the river. A gentle breeze rustled Hong Yuye's hair, and her robes swayed lightly. She looked ethereal. Ha ha ha. A sudden voice echoed. Jiang Hao turned to see a man standing on another boat nearby. He was drinking wine and laughing merrily. However, he seemed somewhat puzzled. When did I find myself on the sea of stars again? Ha ha ha. The stars on the water are quite something, though a bit dizzying. This is good wine. Ha ha ha. The man was a bit incoherent. He seemed to be drunk. Hong Yuye also looked at him. She heard a resigned voice behind her. Unaware of the heavens while drunk and sound asleep while crossing the Milky Way. She looked at Jiang Hao in surprise. How do you know that? My father was a scholar, so I learned some things, said Jiang Hao. His memory of his father was quite vague. He only remembered his father occasionally going out to sell calligraphy. Now that he thought about it, the business must have been good. The family had lived well. Although his meals were quite plain because his stepmother didn't give him much. At this moment, a figure descended from the sky and stood on the surface of the river. He gazed at Jiang Hao. Apologies for the interruption, said the middle-aged man politely. May I ask if the poem you just recited was composed by you, fellow disciple? Jiang Hao greeted him politely. Then, he shook his head. Senior, you've misunderstood. That was a line of poetry I heard somewhere before. I'm not knowledgeable about such matters. The person's aura was restrained, so it was difficult to discern their cultivation realm, but he emanated a certain kind of pressure. This was definitely not an ordinary cultivator. Even the drunk person from before was the same. Many powerful cultivators had gathered here. If it weren't for the Bright Moon sect monitoring the place, things might have gotten out of hand. Chapter 421. Chapter 421. We were tricked. Ha ha ha. Chapter 421. We were tricked. Ha ha ha. Isn't that so? The middle-aged man expressed some regret. I wonder who composed it. Could you introduce me to the author? Jiang Hao shook his head. He probably passed away. I see. The middle-aged man didn't press him further but raised the wine bottle in his hand. Would you care for some wine, fellow disciple? Thank you for your kind offer, but I don't drink, Jiang Hao said. It seems it really wasn't your poem. What a pity. The middle-aged man sighed in disappointment. Jiang Hao didn't say anything. Well then, sorry for bothering you. The middle-aged man turned and walked away. Jiang Hao paid no mind and moved away from the area and continued downstream. Hong Yuye didn't turn around, and he didn't dare to look at her either. The wooden boat didn't need to be returned. So, they left it downstream. The middle-aged man watched the boat leave and stood beside the drunken man. Such a shame, really a pity. The intoxicated man lay at the bow of the boat and gazed at his reflection in the water. He chuckled. Unaware of the heavens while drunk. Sound asleep while crossing the Milky Way. I like it. Ha ha ha. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were unfocused. He was pretty good-looking. The middle-aged man beside him had a bit of stubble. He looked wise. Let's see where this poem came from. With a wave of his hand, the starry river surged, and the constellations shifted. Soon, he was left dumbfounded in place. Where are we? The middle-aged man asked. The man at the bow of the boat suddenly burst into laughter. Right here. We were tricked. Ha ha ha. He laughed so hard that he couldn't stop. He found it amusing that they were deceived. He trembled with laughter and suddenly fell into the water. The middle-aged man paid no attention to his cries for help. It really is him. It seems he doesn't like us. No, I should go see where they are and pay them a visit. First, save me, please. The drunk man struggled in the water. Early the next morning, Jiang Hao walked out of the inn. After returning from the river yesterday, they found an inn. It cost 3 spirit stones for 1 night. They had taken 2 rooms. The location was a bit secluded, and it was not a popular inn, but the facilities were decent. It cost them 6 spirit stones a day for 2 rooms. That was about 180 spirit stones a month. The sect's resources for 3 months wouldn't be enough to cover 1 month's stay here. In places with more people, some things were cheap, while others were expensive. Lodging shouldn't be a necessity for cultivators, but the prices were still steep. The entire inn was covered by formations. That morning, he brewed tea for Hong Yuye and bought some pastries. After that, he wanted to go out and attend to his own matters. First, he needed to find a place to set up his stall. Then, he wanted to visit the Twin City Peak. It was already May. In another month, the Tao conference would take place. He had to be present then. Otherwise, the mission would fail. In a few days, the gathering would likely begin again. Xing might inquire about their location to make sure they could arrive on time. The Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment wasn't a small matter. No one dared to be careless. During the day, the streets were bustling with more people than at night. People roamed the streets in groups of 2s and 3s. Everything seemed normal. After a while, Jiang Hao found a spot for his stall, which required spirit stones to activate. After getting a rough idea of the prices, he spent 10 spirit stones to open the stall for the day. This time he displayed spirit herbs, pill formulas, pills, magical treasures, and talismans in his stall. He didn't bring out the blood gourd. It might come in handy, so he wanted to keep it. Before long, a woman appeared at his stall. She looked at the pull formula. How much is this? 3,000 spirit stones, Jiang Hao said. He wasn't sure about the value of the pill furnace in other places, but here it wasn't worth much. 3,000 was the average price. Others were selling it for less. This is too expensive. The woman took a quick look and put the furnace down. It seemed she didn't even intend to negotiate. Jiang Hao was speechless. He could only wait. How much for a healing talisman? Asked a young man. After hearing the price, the person walked away. Too pricey. Jiang Hao had priced the items according to the standards of the Bright Moon sect. He had also asked around about the prices here. While they might be a bit cheaper, the difference wasn't that significant. He didn't know why these people found his things so expensive. Helplessly, he could only continue to wait. By afternoon, Jiang Hao hadn't sold anything yet. Doing business was proving more difficult than he had anticipated. Although many people asked about his products, they didn't buy any. It was either too expensive or the items were too ordinary. It wasn't until evening that he finally understood what was happening. He lacked competitiveness. His items were commonplace and abundant in this place. Anybody could find cheaper options at another stall. Even if the prices were similar, the other vendors had a variety of the same product. There was simply no reason for anyone to choose him. Looks like I need to lower the prices. But he wasn't in a rush. He closed his stall and walked around. He asked for items and their prices to compare them to his own. He couldn't set the price too low, after all. At the same time, he wanted to assess the strengths of these vendors, so he could prevent them from retaliating. In the end, he decided to raise his cultivation to the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm and lower the prices for his items. He would only lower the items for the products that weren't available here. And by leveraging these lower prices, he could encourage people to buy other things as well. After bringing some food back to the inn, Jiang Hao once again set up his stall. At night, with more people around, he didn't slack off. Luckily, the stall was reserved for the whole day, so he could use it any time. How much is this pill furnace? Asked a woman. 2,300, Jiang Hao said. 2. The woman was about to put it down when she caught herself. She didn't voice her thoughts but picked up the pill furnace again to examine it more closely. This time, she was looking at it with great interest. After making sure the quality was decent, she doubted that she had heard wrong. How much for this in spirit stones? 2,300, Jiang Hao said again. He had seen similar pill furnaces before. The lowest price for it in this area was 2,800. Initially, he had priced it at 3,000, which was a fair valuation. Now, he was offering it at a cheaper rate than the market price. Anyone who knew the market wouldn't change their vendor unless they got a better deal. What about these pill formulas? The woman didn't put down the pill furnace this time. 500 for one, Jiang Hao said. The pill formula was of the gold core realm. It was ordinary but still worth 500 spirit stones. What about these spirit herbs? She asked again. In the end, the woman spent 7,000 spirit stones in purchasing the pill furnace, some spirit herbs formulas, and pills. With 7,000 spirit stones in hand, Jiang Hao sighed in relief. He realized that the items in Yu Xian's storage treasures were very valuable. There was also a spirit sword. At the very least, it could be sold for 4,000 or 5,000 spirit stones. In the sect, it would fetch 5,000 or 6,000. Prices for magical treasures were generally lower here. In the end, he sold the spirit sword for a lower price too. Unfortunately, the person only bought the sword and nothing else. Fortunately, 3,500 spirit stones for a spirit sword wasn't much of a loss. He now had a total of 21,600 spirit stones. At this point, even though he still had spirit herbs and pills to sell, Jiang Hao wanted to find a place that traded in magical treasures. He still had a fair number of spirit swords to get rid of. You want to sell magical treasures to us? The woman at the counter of one of the pavilions that dealt with magical treasures was amused. We don't buy regular magical treasures here. What kind of magical treasure do you have? Jiang Hao took out a spirit sword. It was just an ordinary one. This spirit sword is priced at 10 spirit stones here, but we're not interested. The woman shook their head. I can sell it to you for 4 spirit stones each, and I have several thousands of them, Jiang Hao said. The woman at the counter was taken aback. Several thousand? Fellow disciple, please come this way, the woman said politely and led the way. Chapter 422, True Harmony. Chapter 422, True Harmony. Esteemed guest, please take care, said the woman as she bid him farewell. Next time you have magical treasures, please consider us first. The prices are negotiable. Jiang Hao gave a simple nod in return and turned to leave. This time, he had sold all the spirit swords, spirit sabers, and spirit spears. He had over 4,000 spirit weapons. He sold them all and earned around 16,000 spirit stones. Accumulating a lot of spirit weapons over the years wasn't without benefits. He still had a few daggers left, but he kept them for sneak attacks. Now, he had over 37,000 spirit stones. The immortal peach tree would cost over 20 or 30,000 spirit stones for the next incarnation. He would still be left with several thousand spirit stones after that. For a moment, he didn't know how to spend it all. Since he had reached a higher realm in cultivation, some spirit herbs no longer produced enough bubbles to help him in his cultivation. The further he went, the more he needed divine and sacred items to trigger blue bubbles. Even high-grade spirit herb seeds, which had a high probability of producing blue bubbles, had a much lower chance now. After returning, I need to find a way to get the Candlelight Pill Pavilion to send me some high-grade seeds for nurturing. If I somehow display a golden core realm cultivation, they might agree willingly. It was already late at night, and he should be heading back. However, on his way back, two people blocked his path. One was a disheveled-haired youth, and the other was a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard. Jiang Hao remembered these two. He had met them both during that time on the boat. Their strength exceeded his expectations. Fellow disciple, we meet again. It seems fate is at work. The middle-aged man smiled. I am Wan Xiao. I'm just a commoner who enjoys poems. The disheveled youth hiccuped. I'm Sai Cheng. I am Jiang Hao Tian. What can I do for you, seniors? Jiang Hao asked. It was clear they had come looking for him. We want to ask, does the poet you mentioned have any more verses in that poem? Wan Xiao asked politely. I only remember that one verse, Jiang Hao said truthfully. Just one verse. Wan Xiao sighed. Will you be able to remember the rest of the verses? Jiang Hao frowned. The person seemed to be implying something. Does he think I composed the poem? Jiang Hao felt troubled. Such powerful individuals couldn't be easily fooled by a cultivator like him. It would be best to clarify the situation as soon as possible. Senior, you might have misunderstood. I didn't compose the poem, Jiang Hao said. Then, is it the young woman from yesterday? Sai Cheng asked. Young woman? Jiang Hao's heart raced, but he remained calm. Not quite. It was composed by a deceased senior. Wan Xiao and Sai Cheng exchanged a glance. They felt that Jiang Hao wasn't being dishonest. Had they made a mistake? The two invited Jiang Hao to their loft for a drink. When an expert extended an invitation, he could only go along. With Hong Yuye not around, he needed to be cautious in the presence of such seniors. Provoking them wouldn't benefit him in any way. Indeed, the city was brimming with formidable experts. At the riverside loft, Jiang Hao and the two sat by the window. It overlooked the boats sailing on the river. It was quite lively tonight, with many figures bustling about on the largest boat. It's a wonderful thing to be young. I heard that there's a young woman on that boat, and she is exceptionally talented. I wonder if any of you will get to meet her, Wan Xiao said with a smile. This wine is just average. Sai Cheng shook his head. Jiang Hao focused on his food. As for the bustling boat below, he wasn't interested at all. In his eyes, even the most extraordinary woman was no different from an ordinary one. Aren't you curious about this young woman? Wan Xiao asked. She's just the alchemist from the Bright Moon sect. She shows off a little magic here and there. Her talent isn't that remarkable, Sai Cheng casually said. Oh. Then who would you consider truly remarkable? Wan Xiao asked. Could it be that you fancy that newly recruited young woman? She's still young and can't be considered truly remarkable. Mainly because she lacks her own opinions. Without unique ideas that leave an impact, she can't truly be called remarkable. Sai Cheng sipped his wine. You should just focus on your drink, Wn Shou said. Don't be so critical. When you're young, that doesn't apply. It's impressive to be exceptionally talented to astound their peers. He looked at Jiang Hao. What do you think, fellow disciple? I think both perspectives are valid, said Jiang Hao. Wn Shou burst into laughter but didn't press him further. Instead, he looked at the large boat outside. At that moment, a figure flew out from the boat. The first to emerge was a woman dressed in white. She appeared ethereal under the moonlight. Following closely behind was a scholarly-looking man. The two of them seemed to be comparing their movement techniques. Soul Ascension Realm, Jiang Hao was surprised. They were weaker than he had anticipated. He had thought the majority of experts on this boat would be at the return to Void Realm. It seemed that wasn't the case everywhere. This made him feel safer. At least he wouldn't easily encounter those above the Soul Ascension Realm. If they were at the Soul Ascension Realm, he could afford to escape. After all, with the 9 Heavens battle armor and the golden rings, he would have some means to flee from danger. However, he couldn't be reckless. A moment of carelessness might mean severe injuries that he wouldn't be able to recover from. Is that young woman playing games with someone? Her movement technique is quite impressive, Wn Shou said. Sai Cheng squinted his eyes and glanced outside. Her 1000 dragon step isn't bad. As for the person behind her, is he using the light and dust technique from the Astronomical Academy? Light and dust? Jiang Hao asked. You don't know? That's normal. Few people practice light and dust, after all. Wn Shou said. Jiang Hao squinted and looked at the man more carefully. There was indeed a vague resemblance in the technique he used. However, it was just a faint similarity, and everything else was completely different. He could barely keep up. The reason why the man was able to keep up with the woman so far was solely due to his cultivation advantage. The 1000 dragon step was quite formidable, while light and dust from the Astronomical Academy was rather ordinary. So, this is light and dust technique, Jiang Hao sighed. This technique was different from the one he practiced. Speaking of light and dust, according to the people from the Astronomical Academy, it's an extremely powerful body technique, but no matter how their people practice it, it ends up like this. It's not too bad, but it's not outstanding either, Wn Shou said. Is it a lost technique? Jiang Hao asked. Not exactly. This body technique was learned by a relatively senior disciple of the Astronomical Academy while he was outside. It was a fortuitous encounter. When he returned with it, he claimed it could astonish the world. Unfortunately, he spent his whole life without achieving much with it. In the end, he left it within the Astronomical Academy for others to learn. He hoped someone would fulfill his last wish and achieve true harmony with the light, said Wn Shou. Unfortunately, after so many years, it's still the same. No matter how one learns it, it remains like this. Maybe he didn't learn it fully, or perhaps he created it himself. Either way, the end result is the same. That person was so sure when he spoke about it. It didn't sound like he was lying. I'm also quite curious about the light and dust technique that he envisioned, said Sai Cheng. I see. Jiang Hao nodded. It seemed that he had learned the complete light and dust technique. Just a moment ago, he was worried about being accused of stealing the Astronomical Academy's technique. Now, it seemed they had learned it from outside their academy as well. In that case, there was nothing to worry about. Chapter 423. Chapter 423. Don't you feel an impulse to compose a poem? Chapter 423. Don't you feel an impulse to compose a poem? Jiang Hao and the two seniors watched the two people chasing each other in the sky. They didn't use any other techniques. They just flashed by in the sky like stars. It was breathtaking. Boom. The two figures suddenly clashed. Immediately after, the man from the Astronomical Academy fell. With a thud, he crashed into Jiang Hao and the others. Thankfully, the loft wasn't damaged. Fellow disciples, did you lose? Wn Shou asked with a smile. Isn't it obvious? Sai Cheng munched on some peanuts. Jiang Hao remained silent. The opponent was at the middle stage of Soul Ascension Realm, which was roughly equivalent to his own strength. It was best to avoid unnecessary interactions. However, he was quite curious about how he appeared right now. Had these two seniors seen through him? Hong Yuye hadn't given him any indication that she had seen through him. The young man looked at them. Apologies. Seniors. He hesitated for a moment. It was probably because he noticed that one of them was at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Jiang Hao understood the young man's hesitation. He always displayed his cultivation realm at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. At first, he had displayed his cultivation at the peak of Foundation establishment realm, but Hong Yuye seemed to prefer it when he was at the late stage. So, he lowered his realm. It was probably because Hong Yuye might have set her cultivation at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. If he set it at the late stage, then he would be the junior and she would be the senior. He didn't mind this arrangement. Your talent is not bad. Why are you so determined to be just like everyone else and cultivate the light and dust technique? Wan Shou asked. The young man sighed. I think it was my arrogance. I wanted to be the one to surpass everyone else who had failed at this. At that point, the woman also landed in front of the loft. Apologies for disturbing you, seniors. No problem. Sai Cheng waved his hand. We three just happened to be sitting here. Don't worry. Hua Han nodded. She was quite puzzled as she looked at Jiang Hao. She didn't understand why someone at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm was present with the other two seniors. Then, she respectfully said, then, I won't disturb you anymore. Wait a moment. Since we're here anyway, it would be stingy of us not to give you some guidance. Wan Shou looked at Sai Cheng and Jiang Hao. Which one of you will come with me? My abilities are limited, Jiang Hao said. He couldn't guide these people. These people were in the Soul Ascension realm and were from immortal sects. What authority did he even have to provide them with guidance? These two might have a slightly better impression of him due to Hong Yuye's influence. My abilities are also limited, Sai Cheng said. Hua Han thought Jiang Hao was being honest, but when the other senior said the same, she was confused. She wondered if this Foundation establishment realm cultivator could really provide her with some guidance. The disciples of the Astronomical Academy remained silent. Wan Shou looked at Hua Han. All right then, you can choose one of us at random. If they're willing to guide you, it's your fate. If not, then it's not meant to be. Wan Shou's casual approach made Jiang Hao feel that the strong were often unpredictable. It would be best to choose senior Wan Shou. After all, he was the one who initiated this. Hua Han fell silent for a moment, then she looked at Jiang Hao. Following that, her white sleeves flicked, and she whisked away the half-moon blade Jiang Hao had placed at the side. Senior, please pardon me. Instantly, she activated the myriad dragon travel technique and left. Jiang Hao was speechless. That blade had cost him 3,000 spirit stones. He hadn't expected his saber to be snatched away. This kid doesn't know her own limit. Sai Cheng sighed. Fellow disciple, do you want to intervene or should I? Asked Wan Shou. I'll handle it, Jiang Hao said helplessly. The opponent was at the early stage of the Soul Ascension realm. Luckily, he could keep up. Then, his cultivation changed. He was now also at the early stage of the Soul Ascension realm. This surprised He Ji from the Astronomical Academy. Wan Shou and Sai Cheng were not surprised. They seemed interested in seeing how Jiang Hao would retrieve the item. Under the moonlight, a faint light radiated from Jiang Hao's body, but it quickly became as insignificant as dust. Soon, he vanished from his spot. He Ji didn't know how it was possible, but Jiang Hao seemed to be everywhere in the moonlight and nowhere at all. He Ji felt deeply moved. He felt that he was looking at something extraordinary. Yet, he couldn't put a finger on it. At this moment, Sai Cheng opened his mouth in astonishment. Light and dust. Indeed. Light and dust. Wan Shou was also surprised. They suddenly understood why Jiang Hao had asked about the light and dust technique before. It turned out this was how light and dust was supposed to be truly used. To comprehend the heavens and the earth with one state of mind, to merge with them, and borrow power from them. Impressive. I wonder how it will be at its peak. Wen Xiao looked at the drunk man next to him with a smile. Weren't you just saying you wanted to witness what true harmony with light and dust looks like? Walking through the world while hiding among the crowd. Su Cheng chuckled. It is no wonder he seemed extraordinary. At this moment, Ji was filled with excitement. This is what light and dust is supposed to be like. Just a glance told him it was real. To be in harmony with the light and the dust at the same time. The reason he couldn't learn it properly was because he couldn't enter the right state of mind. In the next instant, Jiang Hao was back. The blade was at his side again. Hua Han, who was still flying in the sky, felt puzzled. But when she noticed the blade was missing, she knew that Jiang Hao had already taken action. Returning to the loft, she assumed the two seniors had done it. However, before she could speak, Ji suddenly bowed to Jiang Hao. Thank you so much, senior. It was an honor to see you do that. Jiang Hao didn't know what to say. He had two movement techniques that he used. One was demonic sound 1,000 miles, and the other one was light and dust technique. Demonic sound 1,000 miles was too obvious, so he had chosen to use light and dust. Hua Han was astonished. She didn't even know what had happened. All right. That's it for today. Sai Cheng waved his hand, and the two people returned to their boat. Fellow disciple, what are you doing at the Bright Moon Sect? Wan Xiao asked. I am here for the Dao conference, said Jiang Hao. Do you know the purpose of this conference? Wan Xiao asked. Jiang Hao shook his head. Being too truthful might lead to trouble. Wan Xiao didn't mind. He looked at the beautiful scenery below. Don't you feel an impulse to compose a poem at such a beautiful scene? They still don't believe that I didn't write that poem. Jiang Hao felt helpless. Afterward, they pulled Jiang Hao onto a boat. In the end, he still didn't compose a poem. They were a bit disappointed. After that, Jiang Hao bid them farewell. This way, they probably wouldn't bother him anymore. Even if they really believed that he wrote that poem, he was truly out of ideas. Take this with you. Sai Cheng tossed him a jade pendant. This item will allow you to enter the Bright Moon Sect and participate in the Dao conference. Thank you, senior. Jiang Hao was a bit surprised but still nodded in gratitude. Then, he turned and left. In the Eternal Traveler Inn, Chu Chuan felt restless. He looked at the beast before him and sought its advice. Lord Beast, what should I do tomorrow so that Chu Jie won't think I'm poor? Chapter 424. Chapter 424. Lord Beast is influential. Chapter 424. Lord Beast is influential. The spirit beast stood on the table and said solemnly, as long as you are spiritually rich, your Chu Jie won't ever see you as a poor wretch. Spiritually rich? Chu Chuan asked. He didn't understand. Clothes, Xiao Li said. My mother used to tell me not to wear torn clothes, or else people would think our family can't afford clothes, which means we're very poor. But my parents never bought clothes for themselves. They always bought them for me. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Chu Chuan felt that Xiao Li was still like a child. After all these years, she hadn't grown much taller. He was now much taller than Xiao Li, but unfortunately, he still couldn't match her in strength. Now that Chu Chuan had advanced to the Foundation Establishment realm, he was excited. However, as he got closer to his goal, the only thing that worried him was seeing Chu Jie again. He couldn't quite imagine what Chu Jie might look like now. The next day, Chu Chuan said, Spirit Beast, I'm setting off. How about, you come with me? He was dressed in some decent outfit that he had bought yesterday. It had cost him 2 spirit stones, and he felt a bit reluctant. Only the spirit beast and Xiao Li could afford not to care about spending spirit stones on unnecessary things like these. Don't worry, Chu Chuan. Although I don't have much else, I do have many friends. Just mention my name when you're out, and it will be fine, the spirit beast said in assurance. Really? Chu Chuan couldn't believe it. However, the spirit beast had no reason to deceive him. Seeing Xiao Li nodding, he suddenly thought that maybe it would really work. But for such matters, it was better not to use it unless absolutely necessary. After saying goodbye to the spirit beast and Xiao Li, Chu Chuan took a deep breath and headed to the location. On the way, he straightened his clothes and fixed his hair. He was afraid of embarrassing himself if he appeared messy. Why am I so nervous? Chu Chuan wondered. After all, he was just meeting Chu Jie. There was no need to be so nervous. Perhaps it was because of his imagination. Chu Jie had become something of a prodigy. They were supposed to meet outside the city on the way to the Bright Moon sect. There was a large tree there. When Chu Chuan arrived, he didn't see anyone. That was expected since he had arrived early. He thought that coming early would help him prepare mentally, but waiting made him feel even more anxious. He kept wondering if Chu Jie would be disappointed and if he would embarrass himself in front of her. Besides these concerns, he also wanted to make a good impression. After some time, Chu Chuan saw a figure approaching. It was a young woman wearing a light blue robe. In just a few breaths, they were less than a foot apart. Her hair was tied into a bun. Her skin was as fair as snow. She was beautiful. Although her robe was simple enough, she still looked radiant. It was like she was a moon among the stars. Chu Chuan couldn't believe his eyes. Despite Jiang Hao's repeated warnings that Chu Jie was extraordinary, and she might have changed over the years, Chu Chuan was still taken aback. Her presence was too captivating. It made everyone else feel insignificant. Chu Jie. Chu Chuan stammered. She opened her mouth as if to address him as young master, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Just call me Chu Chuan. He smiled awkwardly. Young master, Chu Jie said hesitantly. Chu Chuan smiled softly. Have you been well? I almost didn't recognize you. I didn't recognize you either, Chu Jie said. She approached Chu Chuan somewhat awkwardly. You're different from what I imagined. What did you imagine? Chu Chuan asked curiously. Like some of the seniors here. Elegant and refined. Chu Chuan chuckled. He had always been on the receiving end of beatings. How could he be elegant and refined? Have I changed a lot? Chu Jie asked. Well, yes, in a good way. You stand out like a blossoming flower, Chu Chuan said. Chu Jie nodded absent-mindedly as if she had heard similar compliments many times before. By the way, since we rarely get to see each other, how about we go shopping? I'll buy you a gift, Chu Chuan said. Sure. Chu Jie nodded and smiled. I know a place with beautiful hairpins. Then, let's go, Chu Chuan said. A hairpin was something he could afford. After a while, the two of them arrived at a quaint street with few people. However, Chu Chuan could sense that this place was extraordinary. He couldn't quite put his finger on what made it special. It's up ahead, Chu Jie said. Chu Chuan nodded and followed along. There was no turning back now. He had over 500 spirit stones on him, so he should be able to buy something nice. Soon, they arrived at a shop that sold wooden products. There weren't many customers there. Behind the counter sat a young woman. This is it. The hairpins here are the most beautiful, and they don't have duplicates, Chu Jie said and smiled. Chu Chuan nodded. Then, I'll buy one. Chu Jie looked at some of the things and showed them to Chu Chuan. In the end, she picked a light blue hairpin. Chu Chuan looked at it carefully and realized that it was just an ordinary hairpin. It wasn't a magical treasure. He felt relieved. However, when the receptionist told him the price, he was taken aback. 600 spirit stones? Yes, 600, the shopkeeper said. Chu Chuan was stunned. How could a simple hairpin cost 600 spirit stones? He only had 570 spirit stones on him. Should he ask Chu Jie to pay for it? That was too embarrassing. Chu Chuan recalled what the spirit beast had told him. Please, Lord Beast, help me, he whispered. Huh? Did you say something? Asked the woman at the counter. I was just asking where do I put the spirit stones, said Chu Chuan. His face turned red. Put them here, said the woman as she brought out a treasure bowl. If it's the full amount, it'll glow. But if the money is short, it'll spit it out. I see, Chu Chuan said awkwardly. He then placed all the spirit stones into the bowl. He was only short by 30. He hoped it could be overlooked. Please, Lord Beast, help me. As soon as Chu Chuan placed all the spirit stones into the bowl, it lit up. That meant the bowl was full of all 600 spirit stones. Huh! Chu Chuan was stunned. Is the spirit beast really that powerful? No, thank you. Chu Jie quickly shook her head. The two of them walked out of the store. On the side of the shop, Jiang Hao stood at the entrance. He let out a sigh. Even from a distance, he could tell how uncomfortable Chu Chuan had felt. If it weren't for the spirit beast's sudden intervention, Chu Chuan would likely have faced some difficulties. The reason the treasure bowl was filled was that the spirit beast had used its innate talent for deception to supplement the missing spirit stones. When he turned to look at the other side, Xiao Li was following along with the spirit beast. Jiang Hao sighed softly. Some things and some people never changed. Chapter 425, Chapter 425, A Simple Poem. Chapter 425, A Simple Poem. Watching them leave, Jiang Hao understood that Chu Chuan's journey was just the beginning. When he entered the Bright Moon sect later, he might face some challenges, but those challenges wouldn't crush him. Everything that couldn't kill him would ultimately make him stronger. However, he couldn't predict the direction where those two would end up. The human heart is the most difficult thing to understand. Chu Chuan was somewhat predictable, but he had no knowledge of Chu Jie's personality. It was impossible to guess. Afterward, he began searching for flower petals. Hong Yuye wanted a bath, and he needed to find silver moon petals. The silver moon petals were expensive, but they were also rare. This street was the only place to find them. This street had stalls from seniors of the sect who had nothing better to do. They sold various items, including handicrafts, pills, and magical treasures that they didn't want to throw away. Therefore, the prices were uncertain, and there were many different things. After searching for a long time, he finally found the silver moon petals. They cost 500 spirit stones per portion, which was relatively cheap. He bought 5 portions in total to ensure he had enough for later. He now had 35,000 spirit stones left. When he returned to the inn, he felt the stone tablet vibrating. It was a gathering scheduled for tonight. It was probably a last-minute meeting related to the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. Back at the inn, Hong Yuye was bathing. Jiang Hao faced away from the folding screen as she bathed. To distract himself, he mentioned the gathering. Tonight? Hong Yuye asked. Yes, tonight. Jiang Hao nodded. Soon, the sound of water pouring over her body followed. To avoid thinking too much, he decided to go to the Twin City Peak first to gather information. Do you have a map of the Bright Moon sect? Hong Yuye asked. Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. He had seen one while setting up his stall and bought a copy. It wasn't too expensive, but there were cheaper versions with limited information. Those only covered the surrounding routes and names. When he took it out, the map flew to the folding screen behind him. Where do you want to go? Hong Yuye asked. Twin City Peak, Jiang Hao said. He hoped she would offer some insight. However, she remained silent. It seemed she had nothing to say. The water splashed. Jiang Hao couldn't help but wonder if she was still looking at the map. Turning around might be fatal, so he waited patiently. After a long while, he heard her stepping out of the water. Soon, she stood beside him. She was dressed in a red and white gown. A faint fragrance entered his senses. It was somewhat familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. He glanced sideways and saw that her long hair was damp at the tips. Let's go out, Hong Yuye said. She opened the door and walked out. Jiang Hao glanced at the tub. With a wave of his hand, he disposed of the water. Inside the Bright Moon sect, He was deep in thought in one of the courtyards. He felt like he missed something. He paced around and hoped he would figure it out soon. Perhaps it's the state of mind. What kind of state of mind is needed to use light and dust? He understood how to practice it, but he didn't know what he was doing wrong. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked in. Are you still thinking about light and dust? Just give up. It's useless. If it were really that powerful, the one who left the technique behind wouldn't have met a tragic end. No, Senior Chang, you're wrong, He said in excitement. I've seen the real light and dust technique being used. He was nowhere and everywhere at once. Is it a kind of body technique? Chang's Zai asked. Yes, that's right. He nodded. I received guidance from a senior, but I still couldn't comprehend it. Perhaps it's my state of mind that's lacking. The most crucial aspect of light and dust doesn't seem to be the technique itself but the state of mind. State of mind? Chang's Zai shook his head. Many people have a high state of mind, but no one has been able to learn that technique perfectly. Who is this person you're talking about? Well, he thought for a moment and then shook his head. I don't know, but Hua Han from the Bright Moon sect might know. It seems she knew one of the seniors that we met. Tell me the whole thing, Chang's Zai said. He recounted everything that had happened, and Chang's Zai listened attentively. After hearing it all, he was surprised. It seemed that those 3 individuals were quite something. I need to go and ask, Chang's Zai said. By the way, our disciples have been criticized for morning reading exercises outside the sect. Should we consider suspending it? He asked. No need. It doesn't affect them, Chang's Zai said. But we've been unable to refute their claim, and it's quite uncomfortable, he said. Don't worry about it, Chang's Zai said. All right. Has anything else happened lately? Well, not much, but I heard a poem in the Star River. A poem? Yes, or half of one anyway. It goes, unaware of the heavens while drunk. Sound asleep while crossing the Milky Way. Chang's Zai looked surprised but quickly shook his head. It's just a line from a poem. It doesn't mean anything. Focus on your cultivation. He nodded. His mind was focused on light and dust. At night, Jiang Hao stood atop the Twin City Peak. These mountain peaks were extremely high and offered a wide view of the city below. Is this place truly just a simple location? It looks so grand. Jiang Hao was amazed. It's at the end, so the location isn't important, Hong Yuye said. She then turned to face him. Tomorrow, let's go and check out the Bright Moon sect. All right. Jiang Hao nodded. It would be easy to enter with the item given to him by that senior. If he were alone, he might not dare to use it, but with Hong Yuye, it was much safer. They stayed on the mountain peak until midnight when the gathering finally began. Jiang Hao didn't hesitate and took out the stone tablet and entered it. Soon, all 4 of them were gathered there. This time, Dan Yuan didn't appear. This is an impromptu gathering. It seems Senior Dan Yuan has urgent matters to attend to, Xing said. Liu and Gui weren't surprised. It seemed that such things had happened before. Jiang Hao remained silent. Have you all arrived? Xing asked. I'm already in Star Moon City, Gui said. I'm here too, Jiang Hao said. From what I know, many people outside are aware of the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. Although many hope for success, some want to take advantage and disrupt it, Xing said as he looked at Jiang Hao and Gui. So, it could be quite dangerous, but your area isn't that important, so the level of danger will be reduced. However, I'm not sure if it's suitable for you. Have you checked out the location? I have no issues. But there's something I need to remind you. I'll be entering that area, and it's best if your people don't get too close. Otherwise, I can't guarantee their safety, Gui said. No problem. Xing nodded. Then, he turned to Jiang Hao. What about you, Jing? I'm fine with it, Jiang Hao said. Hong Yuye hadn't made any requests. That being said, I must remind you that the end of all things might also participate. They're unpredictable, and your situation may not be as optimistic as you expect, Liu said. Jiang Hao, on the other hand, felt delighted. This might be an opportunity to capture someone from the end of all things. It would greatly help with his investigation. After all, it was more dangerous for him if he made no progress in this undercover task. Chapter 426, Chapter 426, In Need of an Extraordinary Genius. Chapter 426, In Need of an Extraordinary Genius. It wasn't surprising that the end of all things was involved, given their goal of destruction. The Bright Moon sect should be able to handle them. However, it was a bit troublesome because they were everywhere, and no one knew if they had already entered the Bright Moon sect. Anyone from any sect could potentially be a member of the End of All Things. It's early June right now. You'll need to go to the respective areas. I'm not entirely sure how long you'll need to stay there, but it might tentatively be 3 months at most, Xing said. 3 months without doing anything is a bit boring. Can we at least watch the Dao conference? Asked Gui. You can use formations to teleport, or you can enter the Bright Moon sect during regular times to watch the conference. The most crucial part is being there during the critical moments, Xing said. Jiang Hao nodded. This arrangement was convenient for him. Getting there was easy. Moreover, he had the golden rings, so it was convenient. If Hong Yuye decided to lend a hand, it would be even easier. I think there might be quite a few people taking action this time. I've heard some rumors that suggest that the Bright Moon sect is planning to seize others' luck to complete their Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. This is not good news and could potentially affect the Dao conference, Liu said. I've heard about it too, but many people tend to believe rumors rather than the confirmations provided by the sects, Gui said. Jiang Hao hadn't heard of such rumors. Even if he had, he wouldn't have believed them. They were just using the situation to their advantage. If there were any issues, Hong Yuye would have told him. Besides, depriving others of their luck was not as easy and contradicted the principles of Heavenly Dao. It was impossible to complete the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment and become a person of great luck. That's indeed what I've heard. It was probably spread by the fallen immortal clan. If things get too serious, it might affect the success of the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. However, the current sect master of the Bright Moon sect has gone to the Clear Sky School. It seems he intends to invite Shongan to assist with the Heavenly Dao. I believe the genius in the corpse realm could also accomplish this, but we don't know where they are. Do any of you have any information about that? Xing asked. He looked at Gui and Jiang Hao. They were the only ones who had entered the corpse realm. Unfortunately, both of them shook their heads. Jiang Hao knew that the extraordinary genius was probably Hong Yuye because he had been there with her. Since she was attending the conference, there should be no problem. There was no need for Shongan to be involved. After discussing some more details about the Bright Moon sect, Liu brought up something important. There's something I need to remind you all of. Do you remember the changes in the seabed? It seems someone has entered it and discovered that it's not about a treasure, but about someone breaking a seal. This happened several years ago. Also, the issue with the small island that we discussed earlier has been uncovered. It was someone from the End of All Things searching for something. Now, they are under attack. Although it was destroyed, it's unclear whether they found what they were looking for. Jiang Hao grew concerned. Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, he said. It made sense that they would search for the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl using the remnants of the Earth Extreme Heart Devouring Pearl. This was a matter that Jiang Hao could only remind them of. He couldn't get involved. However, it left others feeling concerned. Jiang Hao's words shocked everyone. He had mentioned it before too and told them that the End of All Things was looking for it. Gui was aghast. Looks like I need to pay more attention to this. Liu sighed. This time, he was in trouble overseas. After some more discussion, they ended the gathering. When Jiang Hao woke up, he saw the moonlight. Under the moonlight stood an elegant person with her hair swaying in the wind. There was also a faint fragrance in the air. When she turned around, her gaze was calm. She said, "Tell me everything." Her eyes, even though calm, were still astonishing under the moonlight. After taking a deep breath, Jiang Hao began to tell her everything about the Bright Moon sect, the arrangements made by Xing, the rumors, and the sect's response. Throughout his explanation, Hong Yuye remained silent. When he mentioned the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, she raised an eyebrow. "Do you think the pearl is overseas? Isn't it?" Jiang Hao was a bit surprised. However, Hong Yuye didn't respond. Instead, she smiled mysteriously. For a moment, Jiang Hao felt uneasy but couldn't get an answer. Helplessly, he continued to speak about other matters. Apart from the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, They didn't need to pay much attention to anything else for now. The Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment would require patience. They didn't need to worry too much about what might happen. The Bright Moon sect would handle it on their own. They could only do what was within their capabilities. Once they had confirmed the situation, they would proceed to the Bright Moon sect. Ordinary people couldn't approach the Bright Moon sect easily, as it was covered by formations. However, since the Tao conference was happening, finding the Bright Moon sect was now easier. Nevertheless, not just anyone could enter the sect's gates. Before dawn, they arrived at the Bright Moon sect's gate. It was a passageway leading to the mountains. The moon cast silvery shadows. Jiang Hao was astonished. It was indeed different from the gates of the Heavenly Note sect. At the mountain gate, there stood a woman. There was also a young man beside her who was drinking. Jiang Hao was impressed. The auras of these two individuals seemed endless. It was like a vast ocean. Their spiritual energy surged like tumultuous waves. "May I ask if you two have an invitation?" asked the woman. Jiang Hao took out the jade pendant given to him by the man yesterday. It had the words Bright Moon written on it, with sun and moon motifs surrounding it. When the woman saw the jade pendant, she was somewhat surprised. She then gestured for the young man sitting on the ground to take a look. With a glance, the young man instantly sobered up. He then stood up and returned the jade pendant with both hands. "I apologize for not recognizing two esteemed seniors. Please forgive my rudeness. Please forgive us for any inconvenience," said the woman in respect. Jiang Hao took back the jade pendant. He felt a little embarrassed. The strength of these two individuals far exceeded his. The reason he possessed this jade pendant was because of Hong Yuye, but he couldn't reveal that. After exchanging some polite words, he walked inside with Hong Yuye. Watching the two depart, the woman let out a sigh of relief. "Has the Grand Master come out of seclusion?" she asked. "How should I know? Anyone who can obtain the ancestral jade pendant is not ordinary. But they seem to be from different stages of the Foundation establishment realm. I thought they were from some small sect and were here to join the event," said the young man. "Being gatekeepers is not an easy task." The woman, Ning Yin, sighed. "If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been sentenced to 100 years of gatekeeping," said the drunk man, Ying Shuetian. "What's there to be scared of? Many seniors are still waiting in line behind us to take their turn as gatekeepers. It's said that they're scheduled for duty 1,000 years from now. We got ahead of them, so we can be a bit proud," Ning Yin said. Ying Shuetian was speechless. When he thought about it, it made sense. Most juniors who weren't strong enough didn't get a chance at all. They didn't have the same level of freedom as Ning Yin and Ying Shuetian, who could engage in conversation while on gatekeeping duty. Chapter 427, Chapter 427, I Can't Stop Laughing. Chapter 427, I Can't Stop Laughing. Entering the Bright Moon sect, Jiang Hao felt somewhat strange. Were the people of the Bright Moon sect really this powerful? Even the gatekeeper was so strong that he felt like even the leaders of ordinary sects might not be able to match them. If the Bright Moon sect was like this throughout, then the Clear Sky School must be similar. It was no wonder Shong'an's master wasn't even allowed through the gates. By now, it was already getting brighter outside. Jiang Hao looked around the Bright Moon sect. It was surrounded by a road of magical patterns, and immortal cranes circled in the sky. The spiritual energy here far surpassed that of the Heavenly Note sect. Before, he thought that the Heavenly Note sect was pretty good, but compared to this place, it seemed somewhat poor. The foundation of the Bright Moon sect was simply incomparable to sects like the Heavenly Note sect. In their sect, disciples in the Soul Ascension realm were rare. But here, even return to Void Realm cultivators were quite common. This place is indeed extraordinary. Hong Yuye glanced at Jiang Hao. "Where did you get that jade pendant?" "It was given to me by a senior. The one who got drunk on the Star River. He gave it to me," Jiang Hao said. "Why don't you stay here, then?" Hong Yuye asked. Jiang Hao shook his head. The real reason he was being valued wasn't because of the poem he recited. It was because Hong Yuye was by his side. To make them look at him with higher regard, she must be on equal footing with them. If he wanted to stay in the Bright Moon sect with the jade pendant, Hong Yuye would have to stay, too. If that happened, it didn't make much difference where they went. Furthermore, offending the Heavenly Note sect would lead to trouble. Even if they crossed the boundaries of the East and West, they would come after them. It wasn't worth it. After walking for some time, they heard some disciples reading aloud. Jiang Hao looked over and saw that there were scholars far away engaged in morning reading. They exuded a strong aura of righteousness. I can't stand these scholars. They disturb our rest every day. Can't they do their morning reading somewhere further away, said a woman. Jiang Hao was curious and approached them. Hong Yuye followed. She seemed curious about the scholars too. But the closer they got, the more they felt unwelcome. Here they come again. Louder every day, as if they're afraid the others won't know they're reading in the morning. A young man sighed. Every day at this time, I have to get up and listen to them reading. It was interesting at first, but now it's just noisy. I've already reported it to the Bright Moon sect's people, but it seems they haven't responded, said a woman helplessly. Why not use some soundproof formations? Jiang Hao asked. No way, their righteous aura is too strong. Ordinary formations are useless. Besides, it doesn't really have that much impact. No one wants to put in the effort to set up such a formation, said a young man. That's true. Jiang Hao nodded. There really wasn't much that could be done. Then, why not find another place, he asked. Who should find another place? Them or us? Asked a woman at the primordial spirit realm. If they won't move, why should we? They can read, and we can complain. Let's see who can stand it longer, said someone furiously. Is that so? It seems you have quite a grudge against the scholars of the Astronomical Academy. The aura of righteousness can cleanse the evil energy of the world. If you listen attentively, there are benefits to it, said a middle-aged man as he walked over to them. He was a senior at the Astronomical Academy and had come over to see if he could persuade these people to let the scholar be. That's true, but after the first cleansing, what's the point of further cleansing? Isn't that just asking for trouble? Asked someone. Just listen attentively and understand the wisdom of the sages. Gain insight into the hearts of the sages, said the middle-aged man. These are scholars from the Academy of Celestial Arts, not just the Astronomical Academy. The world has more than just one astronomical academy. Everyone has their own path and ideals. If the Astronomical Academy is considered correct just because it's powerful, then where does the Clear Sky School stand? A man asked. Chang's eye froze. He then smiled. Jiang Hao was just listening on the sidelines and didn't participate in the debate. There was really no right or wrong in such matters. After all, no one could prove it. Some people read in the morning, while others just made noise. It was common behavior. After all, in the world of the four great sects, how could just one sect be dominant? Do you also find the morning reading too noisy? Chang's eye asked Jiang Hao. Not really. Jiang Hao shook his head and looked at the scholars from the Astronomical Academy. The sound of disciples reading reminded him of something. Upon hearing this, Chang's eye was delighted that someone had not come to speak ill of them. However, the people beside him were not convinced. Why? Because you're also from the Astronomical Academy? Are you also one of them? Jiang Hao pointed to the brightening sky. 3 watches see the lamp's light glow. 5 times the roosters crow. This is when a true man studies. Chang's eye suddenly froze. He repeated Jiang Hao's words. 3 watches see the lamp's light glow. 5 times the roosters crow. This is when a true man studies. Wonderful. He wanted to ask Jiang Hao about the continuation of this poem. But when he looked up, he was gone. Where is he? Where did he go? In his shock, he had lost the opportunity to befriend the person. Did you see where that person went? Chang's eye asked the people around him. They also seemed surprised by the poem. None of them had seen where Jiang Hao had gone. Chang's eye left in frustration. He needed to go and find the person. Meanwhile, Wen Xiu and his companion happened to arrive there while wandering around. They had also heard that someone was cursing the scholars from the Astronomical Academy, so they came to join in on the commotion. I'll curse them later, and you throw a few spirit stones to cheer for me. Others will surely follow suit and pay you in spirit stones. Then, I'll buy you a drink, Wnshio said. You have no shame. His companion gave him a disdainful look. Unless you're buying flower wine tonight. Of course. Wnshio laughed. The two heard the sound of reading and quickly approached the crowd and found that these people didn't seem to be complaining anymore. Something was not right. Wnshio approached someone and asked, "Aren't you angry?" "No. I'm not angry anymore," the person said. "Why?" 3 watches see the lamp's light glow. 5 times the roosters crow. This is when a true man studies. After saying that, he took out a book. Wnshio was astonished. Did you write that poem? No, it's not mine. It's from someone. I don't know where they went, said the young man. Wnshio asked about the person who had recited the poem. The answer he got was that the person was nothing special. It was just an ordinary person along with a woman. He was at the late stage and the woman was at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. Wnshio was stunned. Meanwhile, his companion burst into laughter. You've been fooled again. He said he didn't remember, and now he suddenly comes up with another line. He's just messing with you. Ha ha ha. I can't stop laughing. His companion was laughing so hard that he was holding his stomach. Wnshio looked around. He saw a large lake and kicked his companion into it. With a loud splash, the drunk man fell in and called for help. Chapter 428, Chapter 428, A Toad Chasing After a Swan. Chapter 428, A Toad Chasing After a Swan. In the bright moon sect, the narrow mountain path was imbued with magical patterns along the stairs. It seemed to transform into something extraordinary by the influence of immortal energy. Every step gave off a sense of stability and peace. It made the mind and the heart calm. The surrounding flower bushes were extraordinary as well. Their auras harmonized, and the spiritual energy flowed. Frequently, cranes flew by in the sky. Jiang Hao and Hong Yuye were side by side as they walked up the stairs. Was that poem you just recited taught to you by your father? Hong Yuye asked. Yes, I heard it from my father when I was a child. Jiang Hao nodded. It was indeed true, but it was not his father. Is it good? Hong Yuye asked. Not necessarily. It might evoke some feelings in scholars, but other cultivators might see it as pretentious or meaningless, Jiang Hao said. And you don't mind it? She asked. Jiang Hao nodded. 1,000 people would come and go. Jiang Hao only needed to stay true to himself. As time passed, his cultivation would continue to grow, and his lifespan would increase. He would encounter many people along the way. Some would just pass by, while others would barely cross paths with him. These people often held grudges or spoke ill of him because of a single word he said. Should he really care about them? They were just passing travelers and were fleeting like clouds in the sky. Such people would be plentiful in the world. Why should he bother with them? The sound of footsteps resounded, and Hong Yuye continued toward the mountain peak. On the way, she looked at him and smiled. What if someone still wants you to compose poetry for them? I really don't know how to. Jiang Hao smiled wryly. Hong Yuye fell silent and continued to climb the stone steps. Jiang Hao followed her. After a while, they reached the top of the mountain, which seemed to be a place for practicing techniques. Many people were engaged in discussions. This kind of cultivation environment was beneficial to many. Jiang Hao's gaze stopped at a corner. Chu Chuan was also practicing there. Although he had already reached the Foundation establishment realm, he had not stopped cultivating. It seemed he was eager to become stronger. At this moment, a few people approached Chu Chuan. Jiang Hao was curious. He watched to see what would happen. Chu Chuan also noticed that some people were approaching him. 3 men and 2 women. He stopped cultivating and looked at the 5 people. Are you Chu Chuan? The leader of the group asked with contempt. Who are you? Chu Chuan asked politely. I heard you're from the same hometown as Chu Jie. Yusha sneered. With your shabby appearance, you're not here to swindle Chu Jie's spirit stones, are you? She's still young and inexperienced. What vile things are you planning? Do you think we don't know what people like you might be up to? Chu Chuan frowned. What could I possibly be planning? He asked coldly. Don't you know yourself? Yusha stepped closer to Chu Chuan, and his aura spread out. In an instant, a powerful aura pressed down on Chu Chuan. Do you really think it's so remarkable to reach the Foundation establishment realm at a young age? Yusha sneered. It looks like you're solely focused on improving your cultivation while being utterly clueless about everything else. Do you honestly think we would believe you when you say you came all this way just to meet the person from the same hometown? You're probably a toad chasing after the swan. Chu Chuan was infuriated as he stared at the person in front of him. He seemed ready to fight. But at this moment, Yusha's hand rested on Chu Chuan's shoulder, and his strength was suppressed. Am I right? Are you angry because you're embarrassed you got caught? You? Shaw asked. Look into the mirror once in a while. Don't you know who junior sister Chu Jie is? She is the most precious treasure of the Bright Moon sect. One of the most powerful sects in the world. And what are you worth? Chu Chuan retorted. You country bumpkin, don't provoke me. During the Dao conference, I'll request a suppression of cultivation to fight you. Then you'll understand what despair is, and you'll realize you're nothing, Yusha said. Yusha withdrew his aura and turned to leave. At this point, a young woman looked at Chu Chuan. How many spirit stones does your sect provide per month? She asked kindly. Chu Chuan was puzzled by her question. But he couldn't bring himself to answer and remained silent. The young girl sighed in helplessness and turned to leave. The 5 people from the Bright Moon sect left, and the people around them began to gossip and point fingers. It seemed like they were mocking Chu Chuan. They enjoyed the drama. In the end, Chu Chuan returned to his original spot and resumed his cultivation. His eyes were filled with anger, and his fist techniques were even fiercer than before. The humiliation and pressure did not make him buckle. Instead, it ignited his inner desire to become even stronger. Jiang Hao watched him and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there hadn't been a fight. If they had clashed, Chu Chuan would have had to endure even greater humiliation. In the eyes of others, it would be like treating him as an outcast. Such an experience might make him grow stronger faster, but his peace of mind would be eroded. In the end, he wouldn't be himself anymore. He's not bad, Hong Yuye said. Yes, but I'm afraid he might not be able to control himself. He might end up causing trouble, said Jiang Hao. The Bright Moon sect was a suitable place for Chu Chuan. Due to Chu Jie's presence, there would inevitably be people targeting him, but those people wouldn't dare to take real action. They wouldn't clash with him because of Chu Jie, and also because this was an immortal sect. An immortal sect had strict laws against harassment and indiscriminate killing of disciples. The person who had just confronted Chu Chuan had no intention of attacking him at all, and he needed a valid reason to do so. The Dao conference would be such an opportunity. What did you teach him? Hong Yuye asked. I told him to conceal his abilities, and only act at the right moment, Jiang Hao said. Like how you faced me? Hong Yuye asked with a half-smile. Jiang Hao's heart skipped a beat. One wouldn't dare. Hong Yuye chuckled but didn't press him further. She walked towards an empty area. The young girl who had left with Yu Sha and the others didn't follow them. Instead, she went her own way and arrived at a loft. The moon was shining brightly here, and the spiritual energy was several times denser than outside. Magical formations surrounded the area. There were stars everywhere. It was like something out of a fairy tale. This was Chu Jie's residence. Junior sister Chu Jie, the young woman, Dao Yun, called out. The door opened, and a young girl in a white gown appeared. Starlight surrounded her as she walked out. Senior sister Dao Yun, you're looking for me? Chu Jie smiled. Yes. Dao Yun nodded. At this moment, she noticed the hairpin on Chu Jie's head. Is that a gift from the person who's from the same hometown as you? Dao Yun asked. Yes. Chu Jie nodded. I was worried that he might not have enough spirit stones, so I didn't suggest buying a magical treasure. This is very ordinary and not so expensive. Not expensive? Dao Yun had wanted to talk with her about something else, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. In truth, 600 spirit stones were indeed not expensive here. After hesitating for a moment, she finally asked, Chu Jie, do you think 600 might actually be a lot of spirit stones for your fellow townsmen? It can't be. Chu Jie thought about it for a moment. My seniors spend several thousand or even more spirit stones when they buy something. 500 or 600 spirit stones wouldn't be enough for them to purchase anything. Chapter 429, Chapter 429, Stripping Away of Luck. Chapter 429, Stripping Away of Luck. Dao Yun fell silent. At this point, she had already entered Chu Jie's courtyard. She sat down and thought about how to make her understand. Is your relationship with your fellow townsmen good? It was good when we were kids, but, when we met today, it seemed like there was a kind of distance between us, said Chu Jie truthfully. Then, when he gave you the gift, was he trying to burden you? Dao Yun asked. Of course not, said Chu Jie immediately. Then, let me explain it to you, junior sister Chu, Dao Yun said. Do you know which sect he belongs to? I heard it's a demonic sect, Chu Jie said. Yes, the Heavenly Note sect. It's an obscure sect in the southern region. It is a demonic sect, said Dao Yun. Their strength is decent, but their sect has only been established for a few decades since they expanded. In contrast, our Bright Moon sect is incomparable. Then, in such a sect, how many spirit stones would an outer sect disciple typically earn? Dao Yun said. The Heavenly Note sect is different from us. The disciples only become inner sect disciples after reaching the foundation establishment realm. Your fellow townsmen reached the foundation establishment realm only recently, maybe around a year or two ago. How many spirit stones does an outer sect disciple earn? Chu Jie asked with concern. The answer far exceeded her expectations. Dao Yun stretched out one slender finger. 1. Outer sect disciples there typically start their journey with 1 spirit stone. It increases to 20 when they reach the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. Even with 20 spirit stones a month, saving 100 or 600 spirit stones might take several years if he can be very frugal with his spending. It goes without saying that cultivators constantly need magic treasures, pills, and talismans to improve their cultivation, she said. How many years do you think it took him to save 600 spirit stones considering the fact that he only recently achieved the foundation establishment realm? How could he have managed to save so many spirit stones? Chu Jie was left stunned. She found it unbelievable. I didn't know. She stood up. She wanted to find Chu Chuan but quickly sat back down. I can't leave. My master said I could only see him once. I have to wait until I've successfully achieved the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. She then looked at Dao Yun. Senior sister Dao, can you talk to him for me, please? I really don't know what to do. Jiang Hao walked around the Bright Moon sect. He wanted to find where disciples from the Clear Sky School were located. He wanted to see how strong the Clear Sky School was. He was also curious whether Louis Xingchen would be recognized by members of the Clear Sky School. If they did recognize him, what would happen? It had been almost 2 years, and he had no idea about the condition of the remnant souls in his body. Without seeing Louis Xingchen, he couldn't assess the situation. He spent the entire day wandering aimlessly and following Hong Yuye around. It wasn't until evening that Hong Yuye left the Bright Moon sect, and they returned to their inn. Don't disturb me for the next few days, she said before heading back to her room. Jiang Hao didn't mind. Tomorrow, he could continue with selling his wares. He had extra time to craft talismans and cultivate. By now, he had reached the middle stage of the Soul Ascension realm. He could now learn the 4th form of the Heavenly Blade. He could also try practicing the techniques from the Hong Meng Heart Sutra too. Over the next few days, Jiang Hao rarely ventured outside. Aside from clearing away any excess items on his person, he spent his time studying the 4th form of the Heavenly Blade and brushing up on the 3 other forms he had learned before. He also took out the Nameless Manual and studied it again. He gained new insights into the light and dust technique. The Bright Moon sect was a vast place, and he would inevitably encounter people he didn't want to meet again, like Wn Xiu and his companion. On the third day of selling his wares at the stall, they found him and asked if he remembered any other poems. Jiang Hao could only shake his head in defeat. Then, they asked about his father, which made Jiang Hao feel uncomfortable. These senior cultivators had no sense of restraint. Jiang Hao had always felt like he was being watched when he went outside. He knew it was them. To avoid them, he chose not to go outside at all. Fortunately, he had sold all of his items, so he only had to concentrate on his cultivation. It had been half a month, and he was primarily focusing on comprehending his previous techniques, particularly the Nameless Manual. He felt that he had gained a deeper understanding to control his powers. From rough understanding to minute details, he studied everything. The more he studied, the more he felt that he had greater control over the power within his body. However, compared to Shu Bai, he was still nowhere close to reaching his level. But there was no need to rush. He took it step by step. In this half a month, Hong Yuye still hadn't come out of her room, and Jiang Hao wasn't sure what she was up to. On the other hand, he had successfully understood the fourth form of the Heavenly Blade. This move was called No Regrets. It was about going forward relentlessly and leaving no room for retreat or fear. The more fearless the wielder, the greater the power unleashed by this strike. However, using this move might result in temporary mental damage that might leave the wielder unable to use the blade anymore. If used without hesitation, this strike could be incredibly powerful, but it bordered on self-sacrifice. Whether it drained the user's strength depended on the power released by the strike. If it far exceeded the user's current strength, they might become powerless, but if it was used in moderation, it wouldn't affect the user much. This move mainly depends on one's state of mind. This needs the mindset of putting your life on the line to achieve the greatest power, Jiang Hao read aloud. However, he felt that this move wasn't suitable for him. He never allowed himself to reach such a desperate situation. Even in danger, he always tried to conserve his strength and look for opportunities rather than confront the situation head-on. If there truly were no alternatives, he would use it, but he would try to avoid it as much as possible. It was unlikely that he would be able to use this move effectively in ordinary situations. Maybe I can modify it and let Chu Chuan take a look. It might be more suitable for him. Chu Chuan was someone who grew stronger with each battle, and his path was anything but smooth. His unrelenting state of mind fit the technique. However, Jiang Hao was only just learning these forms of the Heavenly Blade. Modifying it would be too challenging for him. After putting away the book, Jiang Hao headed downstairs to have a meal. At the table, there were people discussing something. "Have you heard this rumor?" a middle-aged man whispered. Jiang Hao sipped his tea and listened to what the rumor was about. "What rumor?" a young man at the table asked. "I heard that the reason why Bright Moon sect invited so many cultivators this time is for one purpose only," the middle-aged man said cautiously. He looked around before speaking again. "It said that they invited so many to strip away the luck of those participating in the Dao conference so that a genius disciple can achieve Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment." Stripping away luck. "Is that true?" asked a skeptical girl at the table. "Where there's smoke, there's fire." Moreover, the Bright Moon sect hasn't responded to this rumor at all. Even if it's not true, it might still harm the cultivator's luck, the middle-aged man said. "The rumor must be false. I mean, why would the Bright Moon sect do something like that? The people from the Clear Sky School, the Mountain Sea Sword sect, and the Astronomical Academy are all here," said a young man in disbelief. "But is it possible that they want to join forces to harvest our luck?" the middle-aged man asked. "I don't believe that," the young man said. Jiang Hao felt worried when he heard this. The rumors had started to spread. It had already begun. It might spread so rapidly that it might end up affecting the Dao conference. If it reached that point, Shongan would come over. He wondered how the Bright Moon sect would deal with this in the future. Chapter 430. Chapter 430. I love making new friends. Chapter 430. I love making new friends. Jiang Hao went out for a stroll and found that the rumors were spreading. Some even started to think seriously about it. Once rumors spread, they couldn't be stopped. No matter how much the truth is explained, those who doubt will continue to doubt it. You're truly ignorant. Even though you can't get close to the main gate of the Bright Moon sect, you're worried about what will happen after you enter it. If you're afraid, you can just turn around and leave. Go far away from Star Moon City. But how do you know if it's true or not? Ridiculous. It's obvious that someone can't stand the success of the Bright Moon sect and has spread these baseless rumors. Why would someone be risking their lives to spread the information? Jiang Hao wandered around various places and found many people debating whether the rumors were true. Fellow disciple Jiang, we meet again, said a surprised voice from behind. Jiang Hao felt helpless as he turned to look. It was Wan Xiu and Sai Cheng once again. They seemed to be watching him. Basic courtesy was still important, no matter what he felt. Seniors, what a coincidence. Sai Cheng laughed. How about a drink? Jiang Hao had no choice but to agree. They went to the same loft as before. The massive river was clear and still during the day. He saw an occasional boat pass by. Even during the day, there were people around. The place still looked beautiful. Where do you study, my friend? Wan Xiu asked curiously. Just a small place, Jiang Hao said. Your father must be highly educated, right? Wan Xiu asked again. No, he was just an ordinary scholar. Compared to you two, he is nothing, Jiang Hao said truthfully. These two seemed to like poetry and calligraphy, but it was useless to them. According to them, it was just a way to be cultured. Wan Xiu didn't ask any further questions, and he looked at the people on the opposite shore. I heard a lot of rumors lately. People say that the Bright Moon sect wants to steal people's luck. I heard about it too, Jiang Hao said. What do you think, my friend? Wan Xiu asked. Jiang Hao looked at them and shook his head. I'm not very knowledgeable on such matters. Do you feel like it's true or false? Sai Cheng asked. Jiang Hao always felt that these two were trying to persuade him to join them. Because of Hong Yuye, they thought he was someone important. If he didn't say anything, they wouldn't let him be. Seniors, there's no need to test me. I'm just here out of curiosity and to explore. Of course, I'm also curious about Foundation establishment. Wan Xiu chuckled awkwardly. Do you think it's possible, my friend? Jiang Hao remained silent for a moment. It's possible. The two of them paused, then smiled knowingly. By the way, that young lady, is she your partner? Sai Cheng asked. He was a little drunk. Jiang Hao almost spat out the wine. She's my senior sister, Jiang Hao said. Wan Xiu and Sai Cheng looked at each other and nodded with a smile. I see. Jiang Hao felt like they might have misunderstood something. But it didn't matter as long as Hong Yuye didn't find out. In a little over 10 days, the Dao conference would begin. It should be quite lively by then, and he could also see the power of various sects. Most importantly, he might encounter the end of all things. Maybe he could capture someone alive from there and interrogate them. He didn't expect to find the person behind the stone tablet, obviously. However, it would be great if he could find a way to contact them. He also needed to be cautious of the fallen immortal clan. They had special methods to pry into others' secrets. He wanted to avoid them if possible. If he did encounter them, he would try not to attract their attention. Friend, do you feel like reciting a poem? Asked Wan Xiu. Jiang Hao was speechless. He was curious if all high-level cultivators were like this. Back at the inn, he waited for time to pass. By now, he had sold everything he could. He now had 38,650 spirit stones. He had also bought a lot of materials for making talismans. Even though the things he sold were cheap, the materials he bought were cheaper. It seemed that there was fierce competition here, and the cost was low. Another 10 days passed. Jiang Hao realized that there were only 3 days left until the Dao conference. Hong Yuye still hadn't come out of her room. It had been quite a while. It might be dangerous for him to go to the conference alone. The Bright Moon sect was an immortal sect, and the other sects that were attending weren't weak. He was at the middle stage of the soul ascension realm. He was considered only decent, but he would be a match for any of the seniors if it came to a fight. With Hong Yuye by his side, many things would be easier. It was supposed to be 2 days, but she's been locked in for over 20 days. Jiang Hao was becoming concerned. He used his spiritual sense to check. There was an aura behind the door. He hesitated. He didn't know whether to go in. I'll wait for 2 more days. Jiang Hao could only sit and wait in the inn. He listened to the rumors to see if there were any new developments. In my opinion, we have the right to know. But the Bright Moon sect hasn't said a word. It makes us lose faith in them. The Bright Moon sect is an immortal sect, and we should trust them. These are just rumors. Are we choosing to believe in the rumors more than the Bright Moon sect? But the Bright Moon sect hasn't said a word, and I'm worried. They should at least explain or clarify things. What do you think, fellow disciples? It makes sense. I've been waiting for the Bright Moon sect to clarify things, but they have been very quiet. Jiang Hao turned to look at the young man who was speaking. He initially expressed disbelief in the rumors, but later expressed his concern that the Bright Moon sect hadn't clarified anything. It certainly made the Bright Moon sect look suspicious. He appears to be in the early stage of the Golden Core realm, but his cultivation is somewhat inscrutable to me. At this point, the other person seemed infuriated. I won't say anything more. I'm going to go and ask about this whole thing. Jiang Hao appraised him. Outside Star Moon City, some people had gathered in a cave. The rumors have spread far and wide. Even the Bright Moon sect can't withstand such rumors. With people's doubts in their faith, succeeding in the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment will be extremely difficult. Someone let out a laugh. That's not enough. When the disciple who is about to start the foundation establishment appears at the Tao conference, we'll make the people voice their doubts. By then, will the Bright Moon sect still be able to complete the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment? That's still not enough. The Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl has already been sent. When the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl disrupts the Great Luck, a little kid about to start the foundation establishment won't be able to bear it. The Saint Bandits are also keeping an eye on that little kid. Even if the Bright Moon sect manages to protect the child, they won't be able to succeed with the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. Succeeding in the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment was extremely difficult as it was. Any disturbance could easily lead to failure. By the way, where's Lu Quan? Why hasn't he come yet? He went to the city to spread rumors. Why would he do that? Forget it. Let's go and make sure he doesn't get us into any trouble. A few people agreed. Just as they were about to leave, a man with a bottle of wine in hand walked into the cave with a smile. Done so soon? Aren't you going to talk about it more? After all, we only heard a little. The others were shocked. Run. However, just as they tried to flee, the whole cave collapsed, and a figure appeared in the sky in a radiant light. Why run? We're all friends here. Sit down and talk. I love making new friends. Chapter 431, Chapter 431, Learning the One Heart Palm. Chapter 431, Learning the One Heart Palm. The next day, Jiang Hao was still sitting in the inn and listening to the conversations of the people around him. Yesterday, he had appraised someone. He found out that the person was from the Fallen Immortal clan and was going to meet up with his companions. He had used the contact information left by WN Xiao and Sai Cheng and told them everything. He didn't know what had happened that. If these two were taking action, then it seemed plausible that no one would be their match. So far, he hadn't felt that anyone could compare to them. The Tao conference was starting the day after tomorrow. Yet, Hong Yuye still hadn't come out of her room. After careful thought, he decided to go to her room. He didn't find any barriers. The only protective barriers were the ones they had set up when they first rented the room. Jiang Hao approached her room. He thought of knocking but decided against it. He chose to go in silently. This way, he wouldn't disturb her. If everything was fine with her, he could leave quietly. There was no sound from Hong Yuye at all. He wanted to check in on her. When he was about to go in, the door suddenly opened from inside. His hand hovered in the air close to the person who had opened the door. If he had gone even an inch forward, his hand would have touched her. Hong Yuye stared at him and smiled. In an instant, a chill spread throughout the entire inn. Jiang Hao quickly withdrew his hand and lowered his head. "Senior, I didn't mean to." Bang! A vast aura surged and sent Jiang Hao flying. The people in the inn only felt a chill but didn't notice anything unusual. The sudden coldness came and went very quickly, so no one paid much attention. Jiang Hao held his face and got up from the floor. He had just hit his face against the wall. Hong Yuye had used her power to push him from outside the room, and he had crashed into the wall. It was an accident. He hadn't expected Hong Yuye to open the door so suddenly. He was curious. He wondered what would have happened if he had entered the room. Would he be dead by now? It was better not to be curious about such things. He could end up dead. When he regained his composure, Hong Yuye was already sitting at the table. Jiang Hao didn't dare hesitate and went over to make tea. "What were you trying to do just now?" Hong Yuye asked as she raised her teacup. "I was just about to knock on the door to check in on you, Senior. The Dao conference is approaching." "You use your palm to knock on the door?" Hong Yuye sipped her tea. "I apologize, Senior." Jiang Hao bowed respectfully. Hong Yuye looked at the person in front of her. "How long until the Dao conference?" "It's the day after tomorrow," Jiang Hao said. It was time. Otherwise, he would never dare to push on her door. "The day after tomorrow?" Hong Yuye sipped her tea. "Are you prepared?" "Yes." Jiang Hao nodded. He had indeed made all the other preparations, but the most important one was still Hong Yuye. She was unpredictable and beyond anything he had ever encountered. For example, he knew his meeting with Wen Xiu and Sai Cheng was because of her. If it were just him, they wouldn't be so courteous to him. Although Hong Yuye hadn't done much, her mere presence was impactful. Hong Yuye didn't seem to care about the rumors and the fallen immortal clan. It seemed that these matters were nothing to her. She was probably more interested in the Great Thousand God sect, the end of all things, and the stone tablet. The stone tablet was probably her greatest interest. Before, she used to collect the stone tablets, but not anymore. Collecting more of them would affect the gathering. It would be even harder to find the person behind the stone tablet. It's quite difficult to succeed in the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. "No one will know how it will go until the very end," said Hong Yuye as she put down her teacup. "But for the good of the whole world, it is important for the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment to succeed." Jiang Hao nodded. The Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl had appeared, and the Earth Extreme Silence Pearl was also being sought after. These items were all apocalyptic. Once they appeared, ordinary people couldn't withstand the destruction. Only those with great luck could suppress these things. For many, there was a benefit to someone achieving the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. Even demonic sects acknowledged it. After finishing the tea, Hong Yuye walked behind the folding screen. "Prepare the water." Jiang Hao knew that Hong Yuye wanted to bathe. After testing the water temperature, Jiang Hao sat down with his back to the folding screen. He could hear the sound of clothes being taken off and the sound of water as someone entered the tub. Images flashed through his mind. At this moment, a book suddenly fell in front of him. "I won't make you help me for nothing," said Hong Yuye from behind. Jiang Hao picked up the book and looked at it. There were 3 words on it: one heart palm. Even if he learned this technique, it wouldn't be of use. He examined the book curiously. The one heart palm was created by a couple. Their love was supposedly forbidden. On the night they were separated, they created this palm technique. They planned to elope afterward. The woman was confined, and the man traversed endless distances to reach her. As long as this palm technique succeeded, the woman would be by his side in an instant. Jiang Hao read further. He found that the subsequent pages contained the cultivation method for the palm technique. What happened next? Jiang Hao was curious. Did they elope in the end? Why was their love forbidden? The cultivation world was vast and boundless, and what was considered forbidden in one place might not be so in another. What could be so forbidden that the entire world would despise it? He couldn't understand. Are you curious to know if they succeeded? Hong Yuye suddenly asked. Yes. From this book, it seems the palm technique was successfully created. So, they should have succeeded in eloping together, right? They failed, Hong Yuye said. Why? Jiang Hao was puzzled. Because that man was involved with other women, the one-heart palm failed, Hing Yuye said. So, if one person is involved with many others, both will fail? Jiang Hao asked. Yes. Hong Yuye nodded. Is it possible that the woman might have been the problem? Jiang Hao asked. Hing Yuye remained silent. Jiang Hao dared not say more. He continued reading and found out that the technique was supposed to be cast on the chest. He wondered if it could be cast on the back instead of the chest. If the back was an option, he had a chance to use it. But casting it on the chest? Jiang Hao shook his head. That was impossible. Hong Yuye might go berserk and just kill him at that point. After that, he began to comprehend the technique. It wasn't until late at night that he had an epiphany. There was no sound behind him. Senior. He called twice, but Hong Yuye didn't respond. He turned around and saw that Hong Yuye was lying in the wooden tub. He approached the folding screen and found that Hong Yuye had fallen asleep. He shook his head and sat back down to read more about the one-heart palm. On the day of the Tao conference, Jiang Hao emerged from Hong Yuye's room. He had been reading about the one-heart palm all along. It wasn't a difficult technique, but it was somewhat strange. It seemed to be related to one's state of mind as well. If one had a strong aversion toward someone, the technique couldn't be used at all. This surprised Jiang Hao. Chapter 432, The Gap Between Heaven and Earth. Chapter 432, The Gap Between Heaven and Earth. On the way to the Bright Moon sect, Jiang Hao glanced at Hong Yuye. After learning that she didn't reject him too much, he felt a bit strange. He was surprised. After careful consideration, he realized that not being rejected didn't mean much. He didn't reject people who spread rumors about him, but that didn't mean he thought highly of them either. It could go either way. Perhaps the mindset of the strong was similar to that. Jiang Hao couldn't help but think positively about it. He didn't dare to show it at all. The consequences of being too clever were something he couldn't afford. He couldn't even imagine the state of mind of someone like Hong Yuye. If he jumped to conclusions based on some small guesses, what awaited him would be an endless abyss. The only safe approach was to get stronger. He had learned almost everything about one-heart palm. He only lacked practice. The only person he could practice it with was the woman beside him. Do you want to try the one-heart palm? Hong Yuye suddenly turned to him and asked teasingly. Jiang Hao's heart skipped a bit. Then, he shook his head. I was just thinking about the Tao conference and wondering what would happen there. Hong Yuye chuckled but didn't say anything. This time, they were heading directly to the Bright Moon sect and not to the RLWV peaks. It was time for the development of the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment, so they weren't in a hurry. As they approached the Bright Moon sect, more and more people appeared around them. Some were not strong enough to live in the Bright Moon sect, so they were heading there slowly. Some flew on their swords, while others walked. There are so many people, and their strength is formidable, Jiang Hao said as he watched the crowd. The Tao conference of the Bright Moon sect attracted only the strongest individuals. Even if they were not the absolute strongest, they were among the top elite. They either had enough opportunities or astonishing talent. For example, there were two individuals from the Cliff of Broken Hearts, Mu Qi and Han Ming. He knew them and recognized them at the Bright Moon sect. There was also Liu Xingchen, who was even more extraordinary. There were 3 remnant souls inside him, a true dragon, a sorcerer, and a blood demon. Each remnant soul had an extraordinary background, but they were all held captive. It was clear how strong Liu Xingchen was. Jiang Hao believed that he couldn't do something like that. He couldn't hold them captive for so long, let alone devour them. He was curious about how these 3 remnant souls would resist. If they resisted, they might win, but if they didn't, Liu Xingchen would get bored and devour them. Is there anyone among these people who belongs to the end of all things? Hong Yuye asked. It's hard to say. The end of all things mostly looks at experience and temperament. People filled with hatred, anger, and darkness are the most likely to join them, Jiang Hao said. And such people were impossible to spot, which was the tricky part. The people of the end of all things were the hardest to find. Any stranger could be one of them. Although there was a way to appraise them, it would take too long because there were too many people. They could only rely on their own observations. As long as Chu Jie doesn't appear, those people wouldn't rush to come out. On their way to the central square, Jiang Hao saw a group of people. Leading them was his master, Ku Wu Chang, and behind him were many others. Among them, he saw Xiao Li holding the spirit beast. She was excited. Beast, will there be food later? Xiao Li asked. After it's over, we can have a meal. Remember to mention my name then, and you'll get more food, the beast said solemnly. Can we keep eating like that? Yes. You have to keep mentioning my name. Really? Do you still not know who I am? I know you treat people with integrity. Chu Chuan nodded. He believed that the beast was absolutely right. Jiang Hao walked past them without attracting anyone's attention. It was only when their group had gone far away that Hong Yuye spoke up. Xiao Li regards you as an older brother, which doesn't seem like you at all. What do you mean, senior? Jiang Hao asked curiously. Hong Yuye chuckled. She doesn't lie like you. Jiang Hao couldn't respond. It seemed that the spirit beast wasn't a bad influence on Xiao Li. He wasn't unsure what the beast had been teaching her. The spirit beast was adept at lying more than most, after all. Jiang Hao glanced at Chu Chuan and thought about how those who wanted to target him would do so during the Dao conference. It was unclear whether he could handle it. The gap between him and Chu Jie would become apparent after the Dao conference, an ordinary sect disciple and the most outstanding foundation establishment realm cultivator. He could even influence the future course of the world. How would Chu Chuan face such a person? The gap between them couldn't be crossed with just effort. The gap was there. It would become more and more evident, and wider as time passed. It wasn't a matter of one person falling behind. It was a matter of the other person soaring to great heights. Childhood friendships would gradually fade away in the face of such a gap. That was inevitable. Jiang Hao sighed and looked at the others. Where is Liu Xingchen? Jiang Hao was quite surprised. Soon, Jiang Hao arrived at the central square and showed his jade pendant. He was invited to a high seat on the side. He looked around after taking his seat. There were many arenas in the center, and there were many marked areas around them. Each belonged to a different sects. Jiang Hao found the Heavenly Note sect. Compared to other sects, the Heavenly Note sect was indeed inferior in terms of heritage and strength. The fact that the Bright Moon sect had invited them was already quite impressive. Soon, Jiang Hao and the others sat down. Others began to take their seats as well. They gathered in groups of 2 or 3. They all seemed familiar with each other. Each of them had extraordinary cultivation. Soon, they saw Jiang Hao and Hong Yuye, and they seemed surprised. The two were seated in the most central position. Not everyone was invited to be seated there. The center seats were reserved for the most important people. May I ask who you are? Chang Zizai came over to greet them. Jiang Hao stood up to return the greeting. It's you. Chang Zizai expressed surprise and delight. I've been looking for you everywhere. I didn't expect to find you here. Jiang Hao felt a little embarrassed. He hadn't expected that a few words he had exchanged would make these senior cultivators remember him. The 2 other seniors had gone all out in watching and stalking him everywhere. Fortunately, they didn't intend to do anything. They were only here for the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. Jiang Hao didn't recognize this particular cultivator. Can I sit here? Chang Zizai pointed to the seat next to Jiang Hao. Of course, senior, Jiang Hao said politely. Calling me senior feels a bit formal. If you can sit here, you're not an ordinary cultivator. By the way, Is there more to the poem you recited aloud before? Asked Chang Zizai. Apologies, Senior. I only heard about it from my father when I was a child, and I only remember that much, Jiang Hao said apologetically. What about your father now? Chang Zizai asked. Jiang Hao lowered his head and didn't answer. I apologize for being too abrupt, Chang Zizai said. Who do you think will shine the most in this Dao conference? Jiang Hao turned to look at the highest position, where people were beginning to appear. Chapter 433, Chapter 433, Now, Truly a Senior. Chapter 433, Now, Truly a Senior. The central square was incredibly vast. There were forests and lakes around, and a long river ran through the surroundings. Many sects were located behind some of the forests, but they all had a view of the central arena. Those with lower cultivation were provided with a formation to watch the center area. In the Dao conference, there were arts and philosophies. But mostly, it was a competition of cultivation techniques, including all aspects like formations, alchemy, and talismans. In a corner of the forest, there was a raised platform with seats and an open space. It was where the Heavenly Note sect was located. Chu Chuan stood in the open space and looked toward the highest platform. As various major sects arrived, the strong members of the Bright Moon sect gradually revealed themselves. On the platform, figures appeared one after another, and then starlight enveloped the platform as a young girl descended from the sky. She was dressed in a blue and white gown and was surrounded by starlight, which dimmed the heavens and the earth. She drew the attention of everyone present. Chu Chuan was stunned. At this moment, he finally understood what Jiang Hao had meant. The talent and status of Chu Jie surpassed his expectations. He felt that Chu Jie was unattainable and beyond reach. This was a gap in status. Chu Jie was the bright starlight in an immortal sect, while he was just an ordinary sect disciple of a remote demonic sect. The gap between them was as vast as the galaxy. She's incredible, Chu Chuan said with a smile. Beast, where's the food? Xiao Li looked around. Behind them, Mu Qi looked at Chu Jie with some disbelief. She still hasn't reached the foundation building stage? Han Ming was also amazed. The rumors seemed to have some basis. They all knew the rumors, and although they hadn't been sure at first, it seemed that the Bright Moon sect did have other plans. At this moment, Liu Xingchen arrived with his group. He respectfully greeted the three individuals at the highest position. Greetings, masters. What's the situation? The leading man in black asked. He was Cheng Liu, the head of the Law Enforcement Hall. I investigated it. It seems that someone leaked the information secretly, Liu Xingchen said. What is it? Cheng Liu asked. He was responsible for everything at this time. Although rumors were not always reliable, they still needed to investigate them to feel at ease. Even if they couldn't do anything, they had to at least try. Liu Xingchen looked around and whispered, Heavenly Dao Foundation Establishment. Heavenly Dao Foundation Establishment. None of the three understood. It said that it follows the heavenly principles and brings blessings to the common people, Liu Xingchen said. Where did you hear this news? Cheng Liu asked. One of the Bright Moon sect disciples mentioned it. It's only known to a very small circle of people, and it seems that anyone interested can find out, Liu Xingchen said. Cheng Liu frowned. It seems that we are still ignorant, he said helplessly. They really didn't understand the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment, so they couldn't really make sense of the situation. They could only take it one step at a time for now. The little girl is talented. It is no wonder the entire Bright Moon sect admires her, Chang Zizai said. Jiang Hao could also feel that Chu Jie had a certain affinity with the heavens and the earth. Indeed, she was suitable for the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment, as she herself was like a vast and brilliant galaxy. She was qualified to accommodate the great blessing of heaven and earth. At this moment, the Bright Moon sect announced the start of the Dao conference. Jiang Hao noticed that they were competing in many things. It wasn't just about the cultivation realm but also their mental state, formations, alchemy, and more. Even talismans were being compared. What surprised Jiang Hao was that they could suppress or temporarily enhance their cultivation here at whim. They could either suppress or enhance it, but enhancing it required using a particular magical treasure. Jiang Hao first focused on the group making talismans. There weren't many people there. Then, he turned to look at the place where the people from the Heavenly Note sect were gathered. He saw Xiao Li running around with the spirit beast. She was likely looking for food. What was she here for? Jiang Hao thought that his master must be helpless. No one could control her. They could only let her be. As time passed, light began to appear below. It was accompanied by exclamations from the crowd as some individuals began to glow radiantly. Jiang Hao felt that some sort of power was gradually appearing. It seemed that the Bright Moon sect was getting ready for the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. Once it began, it couldn't be stopped. They had to move forward with it. Jiang Hao looked around but didn't find anything interesting. He wanted to see the power of the Soul Ascension Realm cultivators, but they weren't here yet. Chang Zizai often talked to him, so he had to keep up with the conversation. "What are you doing, Chang Zizai? Why did you bring a young person up here?" asked a woman suddenly. She wore a beige gown and a green gauze shawl. She looked very classy. "Senior Qingshan?" Chang Zizai was surprised. "Did the Clear Sky School send you? I didn't expect that a waste like you would come from the Astronomical Academy," Qingshan said mockingly and sat down. "I heard that your sect has a disciple with the heart of a sage. Is he here too?" Chang Zizai asked. Jiang Hao's heart skipped a beat. "Is that Shongan?" "No. He won't leave the sect so easily." Qingshan shook her head and then looked at Jiang Hao. She looked puzzled. How could an ordinary disciple come here? "Senior, there seems to be a misunderstanding," Chang Zizai said hurriedly. "These two are not from my academy. They are guests invited by the Bright Moon sect. Though, I wish they were from my academy." Jiang Hao greeted her politely. "Greetings, Senior. I am Qingshan of the Clear Sky School. I don't know which sect you two are from," Qingshan said. No one dared to question someone in the high seat. These two looked like ordinary disciples in the Foundation establishment realm, but something was strange. "We are just humble wandering cultivators," said Jiang Hao. Qingshan frowned slightly but didn't ask further questions. Instead, she planned to find out about it secretly. At this moment, some disciples from the Bright Moon sect approached them. They were tasked with serving tea to the guests. Hua Han led the way. She was serving tea to the others. When she saw Jiang Hao, she was startled. She bowed hurriedly. "Greetings, Senior. I apologize for unintentionally offending you before. Please forgive me." Jiang Hao shook his head and didn't take it to heart. He didn't want to hold grudges against anyone. This surprised Qingshan. After they were served the tea, she followed Hua Han out. "Wait a moment, girl. Do you need anything, Senior?" Hua Han was puzzled. "Do you know that person?" Qingshan asked. "We've met once," Hua Han said. "Why is he sitting here?" Qingshan was worried that the person was of questionable background and could affect the gathering. Everyone, even the Clear Sky School, wanted the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment to be a success. The only regret Qingshan had was that the one achieving the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment wasn't from their sect. If they had such a disciple, they would also go all out. According to the list, they shouldn't be here, but, did they come here suddenly? Yes. They are friends invited by Senior Sai Cheng. Qingshan was surprised. "Senior Sai Cheng? The Senior Sai Cheng?" Hua Han nodded. "That should be fine, then." Qingshan was shocked. She turned toward Jiang Hao and the woman beside him. It was no wonder she couldn't figure them out. But why did he refer to himself as a junior? On a high mountain, several old men looked down below. Their brows furrowed slightly. "Are there any other strong individuals or special people on the scene?" "Everything seems stable. Do we need to go and check?" "No need. We still have to prevent any accidents. The Saint Bandits are still lurking, and they may want to sabotage the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. Where did they come from, anyway?" Perhaps, the deep sea. Chapter 434, Dominating the Weak. Chapter 434, Dominating the Weak. After Qingshan returned to her seat, Jianghao had a strange feeling that she might have misunderstood something. He then turned to look at Hong Yuye, who had been staring at something for long enough now. Following her gaze, he saw Xiao Li wandering around. She was probably restless because she hadn't found any food. Jianghao didn't pay much attention to Xiao Li and instead tried to locate the disciples from the Clear Sky School. Although the senior members of the Clear Sky School were present, he didn't want to approach them. That would be inappropriate. After observing for a while, he still couldn't spot anyone from the Clear Sky School. One day had passed, but there was no significant progress. He hadn't found anyone from the end of all things yet. However, cries of astonishment frequently erupted from the crowd below. Even people like Chang Zizai often expressed admiration. Indeed, the younger generation possessed limitless potential, while the old folks like them were stubborn and stuck to the paths paved by their ancestors. Jianghao also wanted to follow the old path, but what he lacked was time. At this moment, a figure shot up into the sky, and a group of people chased after them. Are they competing in speed? Qingshan was surprised as she watched the figure in the sky. It seems like they are. Chang Zizai sighed. They aren't taking their job seriously. The bright moon sect even arranged for such competitions. Is it the light and dust again? Qingshan chuckled. How many times has the Astronomical Academy's light and dust technique been ridiculed? Jianghao looked into the distance and saw the same Astronomical Academy disciple from before. He was still using the light and dust technique, albeit a slightly improved version. However, he was still lagging behind. Is that the light and dust technique? Hong Yuye watched he do with curiosity. It should be. Jianghao nodded. He was also surprised when he first saw it. Have you heard of it? Qingshan approached them. The light and dust technique was first learned by someone from the Astronomical Academy from an unknown source. It's said to be extremely powerful. Unfortunately, no one in other sects has learned it yet. What do you mean by no one has ever learned it? Chang Zizai asked. He told me that he saw someone using the light and dust technique perfectly. Even Hua Han saw it. That proves that our sect is not wrong. How many times has your sect said the same thing? Qingshan asked. It seemed like the Astronomical Academy had been humiliated because of the light and dust technique. However, he had no intention of using it again. He had only used it before because he had no other choice. Seeing that it was getting dark, Hong Yuye stood up. Jianghao got up to follow. Whenever Chang Zizai was about to speak, the two of them disappeared in an instant. He was puzzled. Qingshan and some others felt the same way. Silently, they vanished without a trace. Many people breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't want to provoke those two. At the Twin City Peak, tables and chairs appeared around Hong Yuye. She sat down, and Jianghao brewed some tea. The tea had not been used for a while, so there was still plenty left. When he finished brewing the tea, it was already nighttime. Jianghao sat down and took out the stone tablet. He wanted to see if there were any messages. Sure enough, Gui and the others were online. Text appeared on the stone tablet. Jianghao was speechless. Without entering, he couldn't chat with others. He hadn't participated after the first time. He probably wouldn't enter the chat unless there was something important. So far, he hadn't discovered anything. He could remain mysterious as long as he could stay out of sight. The more people he interacted with, the easier it would be for his identity to get exposed. That would be troublesome. For now, it was good as it was. Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment won't be affected just because of rumors, Hong Yuye said suddenly. Jianghao looked up and saw Hong Yuye looking at the stone tablet. Does that mean the rumors don't affect it at all? If the person who is to achieve the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment is affected by the rumors, then it might cause some damage, Hong Yuye said. Jianghao nodded. That needed a solid and unwavering mind to withstand the overwhelming force of heaven and earth. The stone tablet had more incoming messages. Holy medicine seeds. Jiang Hao was suddenly interested. The next day, Jiang Hao arrived at the scene. He had used the excuse of finding the end of all things to come along with. Hong Yuye. She had agreed, but their smile was somewhat unsettling. Fortunately, there were no more surprises. At the scene, he looked at the rewards on both sides. Alchemy, talisman crafting, formations, forging, defense, understanding of magical arts, and more. He spotted 3 seeds in total. Alchemy, forging, and formations all had seeds as the top rewards. Jiang Hao felt tempted, but he didn't know anything about them. He looked at the category of body techniques and found that the highest reward consisted of 3 items. 1 unknown holy medicine seed, 1 unknown bright moon sect cultivation technique manual, and 1 unknown pill. 3 to choose from. All he needed to do was to win. Jiang Hao understood the rules. By suppressing his cultivation at the Foundation Establishment realm, he could participate in the competition. He needed to use his body technique to catch up with the Golden Core Realm Cultivator at the front to be declared the winner. It feels like a game. He then asked some more questions related to the competition. He asked whether anyone had succeeded before. Unfortunately, no one had ever succeeded. After making sure that there was no one he recognized, he decided to participate. He was not worried about his fellow disciples from the Heavenly Note sect, but rather the people he knew from the Bright Moon sect. Because in everyone's eyes, he was a senior. If he participated so suddenly, it might seem like he was trying to dominate others. It was better to be anonymous. Sometimes he envied the thick-skinned nature of the spirit beast. It didn't have any shame. Soon, he became one of the participants in the competition. He was joined by 9 others. Ahead of them was a woman in the early stage of the Golden Core realm. Dear fellow disciples, if you can surpass me, you will be eligible for the rewards. If you can maintain your position, you can freely choose the highest rewards. A reminder. I'm using my Golden Core realm for this task. If your body technique isn't up to par, you can withdraw now, said the woman at the Golden Core realm. Jiang Hao and the others remained silent. They waited for the competition to begin. Looking around, he noticed that quite a few people were suppressing their cultivation, with only 2 genuinely at the Foundation Establishment realm. It was a little like dominating the weak, indeed. However, a holy medicine seed would benefit him, so he aimed to obtain it. It all came down to who had a deeper understanding of body techniques. Chapter 435. Chapter 435. He must be a senior from my academy. Chapter 435. He must be a senior from my academy. On the high seat, Chang Zizai felt somewhat disappointed when he noticed that Jiang Hao hadn't arrived. He always felt like there was something more to discover with him. It might not be significant to others, but it was crucial to him. 1 sentence from him had made their morning readings better. Such a person happened to be a senior at that. Otherwise, there were many ways to get him to join the academy. Chang Zizai, are your people still competing in movement techniques? Asked Qingshan. Probably not. I heard they were badly defeated, and going there would just result in ridicule. Everyone would say scholars should go back to their books, Chang Zizai said helplessly. Then, he looked curious. Why are you suddenly asking about this? Some of our sect's people also competed, and some elders asked me to keep an eye on a disciple. Unexpectedly, he went to compete in movement technique. It seems he finds that interesting, Qingshan said in annoyance. It is said that one disciple only studied for less than 2 years and then escaped from the sect, and is still missing. I remember he told his master that he wanted to play hide and seek, and then they couldn't find him. I'm a bit worried that the same thing might happen this time. Why would disciples of Clear Sky School escape? Chang Zizai couldn't understand. Qingshan had no idea what those people were thinking. At this moment, they looked at the area where the movement technique competition was taking place. Sure enough, they saw a man with extraordinary bearing and an air of ease about him. Chang Zizai was stunned for a moment. Why are there people from the academy? His gaze fell on a woman. She was also a scholar who sought knowledge and enlightenment. He was surprised. Then, he saw the others around her, which shocked him even more. Isn't that disciple Jiang? Qingshan stared at him. He was still using his cultivation realm at the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. Why was that senior here? Was a movement technique competition really that interesting? They paid attention to the competition. Meanwhile, Hua Han came to serve tea once again. When she saw the seniors watching the competition so seriously, she looked in that direction. She saw Jiang Hao and stopped to watch. Who do you think will win? The seniors discussed. Jiang Hao's participation had made the competition more interesting. Of course, that disciple. After all, we can't lower ourselves to bullying children, someone said helplessly. It's hard to say. Movement techniques don't necessarily depend on high cultivation. Many people specialize in agility, like Light and Dust from the Astronomical Academy. That's why they were the weakest and the slowest, said a man carrying a sword. Chang Zizai was speechless. He had been ridiculed so many times because of the worthless disciples. If this disciple Jiang loses, won't he be embarrassed? Even if he wins, it's nothing special, said a woman. Hua Han didn't speak. In theory, that was correct, but it depended on how this senior would win. I don't know about the others, but I'm sure Light and Dust technique will fall behind. Light and Dust technique is famous, so he won't be the last. Chang Zizai's face changed, but he couldn't refute them. He had to stop those old men from making fun of the Light and Dust technique. It had become a constant joke now. At this moment, Jiang Hao looked ahead. He was ready to start. Suddenly, a spell bound them, and then the spell dissipated. In an instant, everyone rushed. Jiang Hao didn't fall behind. However, he didn't rush to exert himself but instead followed the others with the same calm and ease as Light and Dust taught him. But what surprised him was that a woman next to him used a spell somewhat similar to his. Light and Dust from the Astronomical Academy? Jiang Hao guessed. The woman also looked at Jiang Hao with some astonishment. She felt that the Light and Dust technique he used was somewhat similar and yet different. She couldn't describe it. At this moment, Jiang Hao looked at a young man on the right. He had a smile on his face, and his aura displayed a foundation establishment realm cultivation. Yet, he seemed as free as the wind. He seemed unbound and unrestricted. Pretty impressive. It seemed that agility was also related to one's state of mind. You guys are a bit slow. I'll leave you behind, he said, then quickly moved ahead. The remaining people were struggling to catch up. Jiang Hao smiled and suddenly felt that this was getting interesting. No matter who his opponent was, it didn't affect his inner peace. His steps were steady and balanced, and his aura was restrained. The scholars from the Astronomical Academy felt somewhat helpless. They thought this time they could earn others' respect. The woman from before wanted to greet her fellow disciple nearby and let him continue, but when she looked at the person next to her, she was stunned. There was a faint light on him as if merging with sunlight yet appearing as tiny as dust. In the next moment, he disappeared, and then it seemed like he reappeared around them. Under the sunlight, he seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Is that really the Light and Dust? For a moment, she was rooted to the spot. She forgot to even compete. Her gaze was locked on Jiang Hao. In just a few blinks, he had already reached the front. He stood on the same line as the leading two. At the high seat, the powerful seniors were stunned when they saw Jiang Hao use the Light and Dust technique. Some felt that he was intentionally trying to lose. It was even more humiliating for the Astronomical Academy. But when Jiang Hao's figure was covered by the light and seemed to be everywhere, they were all stunned, especially Chang Zizai. He looked at Jiang Hao with excitement without saying a word. He knew what technique that was. Light and Dust technique. The real deal. I understand now, Chang Zizai said excitedly. This senior might be an elder from our academy. He recently returned from seclusion, comprehended the Light and Dust technique, and encouraged us to continue our morning readings. He must be from our academy. Who else would use that technique? Maybe he saw that our academy was being insulted by all of you, so he personally chose to compete to let you all witness the glory of the Light and Dust technique. Everyone felt that it made sense. Don't praise yourselves too much. It's obvious that this senior has comprehended the light and dust technique and is kindly demonstrating it to your academy, which is in such a sorry state, Qingshan said. It's definitely our academy's senior, Chang Zizai insisted. At this moment, Jiang Hao was still chasing behind someone. He observed the man whose blood was burning strangely. The man exuded a hostile aura as if he wanted to surpass the Golden Core Realm Cultivator ahead of him. That wasn't easy. Jiang Hao could clearly feel that the Golden Core Realm Cultivator's movement technique was flawless. Your movement technique makes me feel like I've seen it somewhere before, yet it also feels unfamiliar. But it doesn't matter, the young man from the Clear Sky School said as he moved on. Jiang Hao paid no attention to him and continued to observe the man with the blood aura. The man noticed someone overtaking him and his gaze turned hostile. Something's strange. Jiang Hao used his daily appraisal ability. Chapter 436. Chapter 436. Are you really here for clues? Chapter 436. Are you really here for clues? Upon seeing the feedback, Jiang Hao was quite surprised. It turned out that he was indeed a member of the End of All Things, and he even knew about another thing, the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl. A Golden Core Realm Cultivator carrying the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl? Jiang Hao found it highly unlikely. In a place like this, a Golden Core Realm Cultivator was too common, and they might be easily defeated and restrained when necessary. It would be a waste to carry the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl for nothing. However, he guessed that the End of All Things member likely intended to use the pearl to disrupt the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment. Given the goal of the End of All Things, they would indeed do such a thing. After thinking it through, Jiang Hao didn't take any further action and instead followed the woman in front. A short while later, he sensed Kai Tian's gaze, which was filled with anger and resentment. Ignoring this gaze, he took a step forward and surpassed the woman. However, he only surpassed her by a small margin. The one who had already left everyone behind was still ahead. The speed of that person shocked Jiang Hao. It seemed that the people here were indeed quite extraordinary. However, Jiang Hao didn't want to attract too much attention. He simply stayed ahead of the Golden Core Realm Cultivator. At this moment, the Golden Core Realm woman felt the pressure. She couldn't believe that she had been overtaken by two people. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't surpass the person next to her. It was an insurmountable gap. She couldn't catch up no matter what she did. Jiang Hao let out a sigh of relief. His victory wasn't just due to his mastery of the technique but also because of the influence of his mental state on his agility. Otherwise, winning would have been extremely difficult. But what about the one who won first place? The Golden Core Realm woman asked in confusion. It seems like he flew away and disappeared. There were too many of us, someone said. The Golden Core Realm woman was speechless. Jiang Hao was also surprised. It seemed that this person had participated in the competition just for the sake of it and not for rewards. Jiang Hao obtained the seed. He didn't know exactly what it was, but he would find out tomorrow. When he went back to Hong Yuye, she teased him. Is that the clue you mentioned? Putting away the seed, Jiang Hao shook his head. Senior must be joking. The clue is that person. Jiang Hao pointed at the furious Kai Tian. What's wrong with him? Hong Yuye asked. I think he might be a member of the End of All Things. We just need to keep an eye on him, Jiang Hao said solemnly. Hong Yuye looked at Jiang Hao in surprise. He hadn't lied this time. Is he really here to find clues? Hong Yuye wondered. What's wrong, senior? Jiang Hao asked. You are really doing your best to complete the task I gave you, Hong Yuye said. I dare not slack off when doing tasks for you, senior, Jiang Hao said respectfully. Hong Yuye chuckled. That's how it should be. After that, Jiang Hao didn't participate in any more competitions and simply observed Kai Tian from a distance. Kai Tian seemed to want to find a major competition that he could win, but he lacked any particularly outstanding qualities, so it was unlikely that he would attract any attention. While observing Kai Tian, Jiang Hao also paid attention to Xiao Li and the others. At this moment, Xiao Li was sitting on the side and talking with the spirit beast. Chu Chuan was facing the people from before. Jiang Hao was quite interested to see what he would do. As he watched Chu Chuan, he suddenly felt that many people around him were also paying close attention, even Kai Tian. It seemed that it was because of Chu Jie. I didn't look for you on the first day because I didn't want to add pressure to junior sister Chu Jie. Now that junior sister is preparing for advancement, it won't be affected by you. The arena is right there. Dare you go up? Yu Shuo looked down at Chu Chuan. What's there to fear? Chu Chuan glared at him. Wait a moment, Dao Yun suddenly said. According to the rules, we need 3 disciples from the same sect to participate together and take turns fighting. You can choose someone. After all, everyone's cultivation is suppressed to the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, Yu Shuo said. Chu Chuan looked at Xiao Li. Xiao Li was called over. Soon, they had all 3 participants. From Heavenly Note sect, Chu Chuan, Xiao Li, and the Spirit Beast participated. From the Bright Moon sect, Yu Shuo, Dao Yun, and Hui Jian participated. At the arena, Chu Chuan was the first to jump onto the platform. He stared at Yu Shuo and said, "Come on." Yu Shuo sneered, but just as he was about to step up, Dao Yun jumped onto the platform. The formation activated, and the competition began. Yu Shuo was speechless. He frowned but didn't say anything. In any case, he wanted to make it clear to the other person how insignificant an early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm was. It was nothing at all. "I'll fight you," Dao Yun said to Chu Chuan. Chu Chuan knew that Dao Yun had rushed ahead of Yu Shuo intentionally. Even if he wasn't a match for her, he still had to try. "You may not be aware of the difference between us, but the speed of your progress has made you a bit overconfident," Dao Yun said softly. "Fighting me is better than fighting Yu Shuo. At least I don't have to endure too much humiliation." He didn't say that out loud, thought. In Dao Yun's view, Chu Chuan was already quite formidable, especially considering that he had accumulated 600 spirit stones before reaching the Foundation Establishment realm. However, compared to Chu Jie, the gap was still too vast. Even if there was nothing between them, people would judge him harshly. He would definitely have a hard time at the Bright Moon sect. As for what Dao Yun just said, Chu Chuan didn't believe it. Both were in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, and no matter how talented the other person was, they couldn't be that powerful. "Sorry for this." Chu Chuan dashed out with a whoosh. Dao Yun shifted slightly to avoid his attack. In that small fraction of time, she struck Chu Chuan's arm with her palm. With a thunderous sound, Chu Chuan was pushed back. Jiang Hao watched and knew that Chu Chuan had already lost. The gap in strength was just too wide. Even if Chu Chuan used all his strength, he couldn't win against this young woman. Their gap wasn't in experience but in control of power. That was a gap that was difficult to bridge. At that moment, Jiang Hao saw Fang Jin walking over with a middle-aged man. It was the senior, Han Xiao, who had made a deal with him before. He looked up at Chu Chuan on the platform and was surprised. "Did I make a mistake back then?" "I think so." Fang Jin nodded. "I heard that he didn't have any special encounters. He just cultivated daily. At most, he had the resources given to him by you. He didn't have any famous teachers guiding him either." Han Xiao looked at Chu Chuan. "Did you invite him to join the sect?" "I did, but he refused," Fang Jin said. "He's got some backbone, but he's going to take quite a blow this time," Han Xiao said. Fang Jin looked at Chu Chuan without saying anything. At this moment, Chu Chuan attacked again. He was extremely fast. His techniques were seamlessly integrated with his fists and feet as if he wanted to break through his opponent's defenses in one go. However, no matter how he attacked, he couldn't hit his opponent. Sometimes, he was repelled by a single strike from his opponent. Boom! After exhausting all his attacks, Chu Chuan was pushed back by Dao Yun. "Surrender. You're not my match," Dao Yun said. Chu Chuan gritted his teeth and attacked again. This time, his blood burned, and his aura surged. He still couldn't keep up with Dao Yun's speed. However, as the flames burned in his body, his speed increased. Dao Yun was just dodging his attacks before, but now, she was actively defending herself. Jiang Hao watched and sighed inwardly. His unyielding personality would make him suffer. But this was his path, and stopping here would mean weakness. Chapter 437, Chapter 437, Defeating the Opponent with One Punch. Chapter 437, Defeating the Opponent with One Punch. Chu Chuan is going to lose, but he's quite formidable. It's just that he seems a bit impulsive, said Bai Qiong beside Fang Jin. Jiang Hao heard this but didn't think it was untrue. Chu Chuan had to accept defeat with dignity if he wanted to become stronger. Only setbacks could teach him how to become a stronger individual. In the brutal world of cultivation, it was the best way for him to become stronger. As long as he didn't stray from the path, he would definitely shine in the future. In the arena, Dao Yun felt a bit uneasy. Are you crazy? She struck with her palm and injured Chu Chuan. She hoped it would make him lose before any more damage. Continuing the fight like this wouldn't be good. However, Chu Chuan stood up once again from the ground. His lifeblood continued to burn. He attacked once more. Dao Yun tiptoed lightly and then kicked. With a loud thud, Chu Chuan fell to the ground again. Dao Yun thought he wouldn't be able to get up this time. However, Chu Chuan stood up again. Once again, he started his assault. Dao Yun was uncertain and finally decided to fight alongside Chu Chuan. Their fists and feet clashed. They seemed evenly matched. Then, she found an opening. She struck Chu Chuan with her palm, but she was hit in the shoulder. It made her take a few steps back. Would this be enough? Dao Yun thought. Even though he had already suffered many injuries, Chu Chuan still stood up. Dao Yun frowned and attacked again. Chu Chuan fell to the ground yet again. This time, some bones in his body were broken from the impact. Surely, he can't get up now, Dao Yun thought. However, Chu Chuan struggled to get up. He looked at Dao Yun with an indomitable spirit. Then, he roared in anger, and his strength began to surge. He had made a slight advancement in his cultivation. Using this momentum, he launched another attack. However, Dao Yun's attack severely injured Chu Chuan, and he fell to the ground once again. This time I didn't hold back. You surprised me, Dao Yun said. If he had the same time and resources as her, he would have defeated her. Chu Chuan looked at Dao Yun from the ground. His eyes burned with shame. He was still too weak. He felt like a mad, powerless beast going on a rampage. The gap in strength was too wide. Senior brother Jiang had told him as much, but he wasn't willing to believe it. Well done, said the spirit beast as it landed beside Chu Chuan with Xiao Li. A friend once told me that all difficulties you face in life are there to help you hone your skills to reach your potential. You should thank them for being the stepping stones to your success. I make friends with sincerity. But these little children don't show me any respect at all, even when they know you're my friend. Xiao Li, let's teach them a lesson. Xiao Li looked at Dao Yun and her group. You all should fight me together. Only we can beat up our junior brother. No one else is allowed to do that. Chu Chuan looked at the spirit beast with excitement. He was grateful that Xiao Li had said those words. Jiang Hao watched from a distance. He felt helpless. Who taught Xiao Li to be so brazen? The people from the Heavenly Note sect are really arrogant, Yu Shuo said as he arrived at the arena. I'll take you on alone. If you can defeat me, you win. I'll even give you all the spirit stones I have. If you lose, I won't take your spirit stones, but the next time you see me, you better lower your head and bow. Also, I'll be suppressing my cultivation to match yours. If you're unwilling, just take back your words. There's no shame in acknowledging your weakness. Do you still take pride in the fact that you achieved the Foundation Establishment realm at a young age? Are you still proud? Xiao Li puffed up her cheeks. Who's talking big now? If you keep provoking me, I'll get angry and hit you. Then you better give it your all. I'm not Dao Yun. I won't hold back. I'll make you see how big the gap between us is with just one strike. Yu Shuo sneered. The spirit beast and Chu Chuan stepped back. Dao Yun also stepped back. In the arena, Only Xiao Li and Yu Shuo remained. Fang Jin looked at Xiao Li and frowned. How? Who's that little girl? She's a bit strange, Han Xiao said. But he was more concerned about Chu Chuan. His recent burst of power had caught his attention. It seemed like he had really missed a promising talent. But there were so many talents out there and missing one shouldn't matter much. It was just that he had misjudged this particular child. It bothered him. Maybe his surge in power was just for a fleeting moment. He might not amount to much in the future. Boom. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out. Bai Qiong exclaimed, "How is this possible?" Han Xiao was puzzled and looked over in astonishment. What he saw left him shocked. Yu Shuo lay on the ground. His teeth had been knocked out. He couldn't even get up. The girl who had struck him seemed a bit flustered. I didn't know he was so fragile. Xiao Li turned to the spirit beast for help. She was anxious. Fighting outside with such abandon would get them in trouble. Her mother had scolded her before. She knew senior brother Jiang would scold her this time. Dao Yun and the others were stunned. They wondered if Yu Shuo had let his guard down, after all. Yu Shuo, on the other hand, was astonished. He didn't even know what had happened. This is the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm? It was impossible. That punch had beat someone in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. But there was no change in the formation. It meant that the attack was truly of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Yu Shuo lowered his head in shame. He didn't even want to get up from the ground. Jiang Hao watched Yu Shuo and shook his head. In truth, Xiao Li had not fought fairly. But there was no fairness in the world. However, when he saw Xiao Li receiving many spirit stones, he was stunned. That child had kept his word and handed over all the spirit stones he had. So, you can earn spirit stones like this? Jiang Hao was somewhat tempted, but he held a senior's status here. If he were to engage in combat with the Golden Core and Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, he would undoubtedly be mocked. It was better to keep a low profile. At night, Jiang Hao and Hong Yuye followed Kai Tian. They wanted to see if they could find more people from the end of all things. But the more they followed, the more familiar Jiang Hao felt with his surroundings. They had followed him to the area where the team from the Heavenly Note sect was staying. What does he want to do here? Jiang Hao was puzzled until he saw the other person entering Chu Chuan's room. Then, he understood. It seems that the end of all things has targeted your junior brother, Hong Yuye said with a soft laugh. Jiang Hao hadn't expected the end of all things to come looking for Chu Chuan. He had expected them to find Lin Ji instead. However, in the Bright Moon sect, Chu Chuan's status was somewhat infamous. Besides, he had been pinned down today, so it was indeed worth trying to win him over. The question was how he intended to win him over. A moment later, Hong Yuye and Jiang Hao silently entered Chu Chuan's room too. Kai Tian was dressed in a black robe, and his face was not properly visible. When he entered, the formation began to cover the room. It was apparently done to prevent any accidents. Who are you? Chu Chuan, who was sitting at the table, looked toward the door. Kai Tian stood there and gazed at Chu Chuan, but he didn't speak. Chu Chuan struggled to get up, but he remained alert. He seemed ready to flee at any moment. Don't worry. I am not your enemy, Kai Tian said. Not my enemy. Chu Chuan stared at the person who had suddenly appeared. Then, are you a friend? Chapter 438. Chapter 438. I want to surpass her on her pedestal. Chapter 438. I want to surpass her on her pedestal. For people stood in what looked like an ordinary guest room. By the window, there was a man in a black robe. At the table in the middle were several young people wrapped in gauze. A man and a woman were watching them from the shadows. However, no one noticed them. Jiang Hao was quite surprised. This was Hong Yuye's doing. Even when they stood in the room in front of everyone, no one could see them. He wondered if Hong Yuye used the same method to visit him. But his perception was not bad, and they both had the Heaven Extinction GU poison. When they got close to each other, they were able to sense it. We're not friends yet, But we can be, said Kai Tian said. What do you want to talk about, then? Chu Chuan asked as he took a step back. Jiang Hao saw that he was trying to get closer to the window. He was attempting to escape. Is it true that Chu Jie from the Bright Moon sect is your childhood friend? Kai Tian asked. Childhood friend? Chu Chuan looked puzzled and then shook his head. Senior, are you mistaken? At most, we're just from the same hometown. I see, but I heard that you have a very close relationship with her. You even spent all your spirit stones to buy her a gift, said Kai Tian. His tone suddenly turned hostile. But they insulted you. They called you a country bumpkin and took your hard-earned spirit stones. Even Chu Jie didn't speak up for you, did she? Doesn't she know your situation? Doesn't she know that in your sect, you're just an ordinary disciple? Doesn't she know you only earn a few spirit stones a month? Does such a young woman deserve the gift that you bought her with all your spirit stones? Chu Chuan lowered his head. The words stung him. She is the Bright Moon sect's prodigy. She's different from you. She no longer cares about you. Perhaps, in her heart, you're no longer worthy of her, Kai Tian said. So? Chu Chuan asked. I can help you bring her down from her pedestal. I can help you make her suffer, and then you can go and comfort her. Women are at their most vulnerable when they're down, and that's the best time to win their hearts, Kai Tian said. Chu Chuan fell silent for a long time. What if I refuse? Then we can't be friends, but we won't be enemies either. I'll just turn around and leave. But you should think carefully. This is your only chance. If you don't seize it, there won't be anyone in this world who will lift a finger to help you. No one will understand you, Kai Tian said. Why are you trying to help me? Chu Chuan asked. Because we want to, that's all, Kai Tian said. We? Chu Chuan was puzzled. Yes. You can trust our strength, Kai Tian said. Chu Chuan looked at him. He was at the window now. He was searching for an opening to flee. If I agree, what would I need to do? He asked. It's very simple. You just have to carry something with you and wait for our instructions. Kai Tian hadn't finished speaking when Chu Chuan moved. He used his strongest force to hit the window. With a bang, Chu Chuan bounced back. Looking at Chu Chuan on the ground, Kai Tian sighed. It seems you don't trust me. Why should I trust you? Who even are you? Since he couldn't escape, Chu Chuan did away with the pretense. Does it really matter who I am? When you were insulted and pushed around, didn't you wish for someone to come to your aid? Do you really need to know who I am to accept my help? Kai Tian asked. Help me with what? Chu Chuan looked at him. Would Chu Jie have taken you to buy something you couldn't afford if it wasn't just to humiliate you and show you your place? Kai Tian asked. That's true. Chu Jie did take me to a shop where I couldn't afford anything. I couldn't even lift my head because of embarrassment, said Chu Chuan. Isn't that just it? Kai Tian said. Chu Chuan shook his head. I understand that everyone pities me, but I don't want pity. My senior brother did warn me. He explained everything to me so that I would be prepared before coming here. So, I understand that things change. It might not be as you would imagine them to be. And you can only truly understand it after you experience it. The answer is clear to me now, more than it is to you, it seems. What about the humiliation in that arena? Was that fake too? Kai Tian asked. Jiang Hao saw that he was trying to get closer to the window. He was attempting to escape. It was real, Anna one Reet Lieutenant. Many people mock me. One remember all or it very clearly. But I won't be discouraged by it. I will fight for it, and one day, I will take back my dignity from them. I will surpass them and make them understand that today's humiliation will fall on them as well. No one should bully the poor or the weak. Chu Chuan's eyes burned with determination. And why would I bring down Chu Jie from her pedestal? I want to surpass her on her pedestal, he said. Kai Tian was stunned. He felt that this child was ignorant and foolish, even arrogant. But he was deeply moved by Chu Chuan's determination. It seemed to remind him of his past. In the end, he didn't say anything and turned to leave. Jiang Hao glanced at Chu Chuan and felt it was time to let him go. Chu Chuan had stirred his immortal heart. In the future, he would definitely attract the attention of many powerful people. The cliff of broken hearts shouldn't hold him back. After that, he left and caught up with Kai Tian. Are you going to just give up? Jiang Hao caught up to him. Who are you? Kai Tian stepped back. He stared at the person in front of him. Late stage of the Foundation establishment realm? The person seemed dangerous. You don't need to concern yourself with who I am. I'm just curious why you gave up on Chu Chuan just like that. I don't think the end of all things would look down on him so much, Jiang Hao said. When he heard the name of the organization he belonged to, Kai Tian was stunned. He thought of fleeing from there. Once the information was leaked, he would undoubtedly face death. The Bright Moon sect was currently trying to eliminate them everywhere they went. Getting close to the Bright Moon sect was extremely dangerous. No need to run. With your golden core realm cultivation, you can't escape anyway, Jiang Hao calmly said. He had already mobilized all his power to prevent the person in front of him from fleeing or ending himself. People from the end of all things were capable of anything, so he couldn't be careless. What do you want? Kai Tian asked. I just want to know why you spared Chu Chuan, Jiang Hao said. He was genuinely curious. He could have been used to harm Chu Jie. There's no reason for it. Foolish and ignorant people like him have no value, Kai Tian said. It seems like you don't really like talking about this. Well then, I'll change the topic. Is the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl on you? Jiang Hao stared at him. I don't understand what you're talking about. What pearl? Kai Tian appeared completely bewildered. Jiang Hao whispered, let's make a deal. If you cooperate, I can let you go. Chapter 439. Chapter 439. Let me first tell you what I can offer, and then you can decide. Chapter 439. Let me first tell you what I can offer, and then you can decide. Deal? Kai Tian looked at the man in front of him. If I don't want to, can I leave? Jiang Hao nodded. There really was no need to force the issue. Then, I refuse, Kai Tian said. Jiang Hao sighed. I suggest you listen to the whole thing first. I don't think you'll give me anything in return, and with your strength, I have no choice at all. Even if I complete your request, you'll still use me. When I'm not useful anymore, you'll kill me and find someone else, Kai Tian said. Jiang Hao was surprised because this person saw through things quite clearly. However, he wasn't that kind of person. He usually killed people only if they were a threat to him. Jiang Hao waved his hand. Let me first tell you what I can offer, and then you can decide. Kai Tian was puzzled. He was on guard against any sudden moves from this person. But what surprised him was that as soon as he got closer, a force suppressed him. He couldn't move. For a moment, he was worried because he didn't want to die here uselessly. But soon, he realized he was overthinking. It seemed that this person just wanted to talk. When Jiang Hao offered him the deal, he was stunned. My reward is that I can help you kill an elder of the Blood Shadow sect. Those words pricked his heart. Kai Tian felt that he could do anything for that one goal. Any elder? He asked. Of course. Jiang Hao nodded. You help me first, and I'll work for you, Kai Tian said. Jiang Hao shook his head. That's not possible. I don't need you to serve me, and your life is worthless to me. I only want to make a trade. You get what I want, and I can provide you with what you want. The elders of the sect must be powerful. Jiang Hao didn't know if he could kill an elder, but Xing still owed him a favor. If he couldn't do it, maybe others could. But everything had to wait until after the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment succeeded. With Hong Yuye around, the area he was responsible for should have no problem. After that, he could let Xing take action. The only thing to consider was that there would definitely be people at the gathering who would be suspicious of why Xing was making a move instead of Jiang Hao. It didn't matter. If Xing felt it was important enough, he could make a move. What do you want? And why should I trust you? Kai Tian asked. Why should you trust me? Jiang Hao chuckled. Why do you trust the end of all things? Why do you want everyone to end? Can the death of the entire world compare to the death of one elder? You could kill those elders by yourself. Kai Tian looked at the man in front of him and finally lowered his head. Just tell me what you want, and I'll do it, he said. Jiang Hao smiled. Do you have the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl on you? Yes, but Kai Tian took out a small, sealed fragment. It was green and looked like a shard. Jiang Hao could tell at a glance that it was indeed a fragment of the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl. He took the fragment and knew that this thing couldn't affect him much. But if used well, it might have miraculous effects on other things. The best way to make use of it would probably be to place it on Chu Chuan and make him get closer to Chu Jie. How much do you know about the end of all things? Jiang Hao asked. Not much, but I know they are powerful, Kai Tian said. Who brought you into the end of all things? One of my seniors. Does he know what the end of all things intends to do? He might know something. He often goes out. What else do you know besides that? They are targeting Chu Jie. It's said that Chu Jie is going to complete the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment. Once successful, the balance will tilt. Is that all? Isn't that enough? Jiang Hao shook his head. This information was far from enough. Now, it seemed that the only way to find out more was to find this senior. What do you want to know? I can ask around for you, Kai Tian said anxiously. I want to know the secrets of the end of all things, especially those related to the southern region. Do you know anything about that? Jiang Hao asked. I can ask around. I heard from my senior that as long as I succeed this time, he will take me to meet an expert. I can inquire for you, I swear. My senior is not as easy to control as I am, Kai Tian said. Jiang Hao thought for a moment. Which elder do you want gone? Kai Tian was overjoyed. Chen Yi. He's here too. Jiang Hao nodded. Wait for my message. If I make a move, you'll have to ask around and find out more about your organization. Wait for me to make contact. After that, Jiang Hao disappeared in the moonlight. In the woods, Jiang Hao appeared beside Hong Yuye. You're not going to kill him? Hong Yuye asked. Not yet, Jiang Hao said. There really was no need to kill Kai Tian. However, once Jiang Hao helped him get his revenge, it would be difficult to control him. Jiang Hao didn't have a plan. He just wanted to plant a pawn. Even then, it would be difficult to succeed. The human heart was unpredictable. If the other person's revenge was put on hold, he would work hard. If the revenge was done, Kai Tian might refuse to fulfill his side of the bargain. Everything needed careful consideration. Right now, the thing of importance was the fragment of the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl. There should be quite a few fragments here. All to destroy the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment, Jiang Hao said. Just that won't be enough. The Bright Moon sect is not weak. They are far stronger than these ragtag masses. Even if the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment is fragile right now, it is still something that an immortal sect has put all its effort into promoting. It won't be so easy to disrupt the attainment of the Heavenly Dao Foundation establishment, Hong Yuye said. Jiang Hao nodded. The next day, they returned to the inn. Jiang Hao sat at the table and took out the holy medicine seed. The seed was reddish-brown and surged with a powerful aura. Other than that, there was nothing strange about it. Jiang Hao appraised it. Jiang Hao frowned. There were just so many conditions for the growth of this seed. It was the first time he had seen such a complicated seed. Plants like the heavenly fragrance Dao flower only needed watering once a day. High-grade spirit herbs needed both spirit liquid and spirit stones. But sweet leaf cold grass seed required so many things. He wondered how many spirit stones it would cost. However, once it took root and sprouted, he might get purple bubbles. Of course, the effect of the sweet leaf cold grass was also extraordinary. It enhanced one's cultivation aptitude. Unfortunately, he didn't need any improvement on that front. Cultivation aptitude was the speed at which one absorbed spiritual energy. He didn't really need to enhance that. If it were about enhancing comprehension, it would have been much better. Watering it 7 times meant it would take almost a month and a half to germinate. He could only wait until he got back. After that, he had to wait for others' reactions to the new findings and keep an eye on Kai Tian. Half a month later, around mid-June, the Dao conference was in full swing. During this time, Chu Jie appeared twice. One time, she used the Star Moon healing technique and allowed everyone to recover their peak physical condition. The other time, she bestowed blessings and helped with everyone's comprehension. Chu Jie's influence began to grow. In the evening, Jiang Hao received a message from Wan Xiu. "Meet me outside the city, at the Star Moon Temple." Jiang Hao was surprised. What did these people want with him? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.